Bai Wanjie's own substance chains exploded. He punched the flower god in the chest. If the power of that blow had been delivered to another deified elite of the same level, the foe would have been severely injured. But when the strike landed on the newly emerged flower god, only the being's clothes were damaged. The creature itself merely staggered backward, then lunged at Bai Wanjie again. Everyone was shocked. They knew what the flower gods were like. Even if they were very good at making genofluids, their battle powers were lame and their bodies lacked strength. There wasn't a single deified in their entire race. Right now, the flower god had been able to absorb Bai Wanjie's strike and remain totally intact. This was a truly frightening thing to witness. Bai Wanjie's body flashed. He swung another fist that brought a black hole with it. He sucked the flower god into the black hole. Everyone nearby could see that the black hole was about to close and exile the flower god into space. But suddenly, a purple flower opened. It appeared in the mouth of the closing black hole and wedged it open. The power of the black hole strained to close itself, but it couldn't make any headway. The purple flower came further and further out of the pit. It looked like a creepy face that was smiling. The next second, a pair of hands came out of the purple flower and ripped apart the black hole. And then, the entire purple flower emerged from the remains of the black hole. Everyone was shocked. That creature had used the raw power of its body to tear a black hole to shreds and fight its way back to reality. That was a very scary physical power. Oh no! How can the flower god possess such a scary body? Everybody watched as the flower god fought back against Bai Wanjie, and it wasn't showing any signs of weakness against its enemy. Bai Wanjie cycled through a few dozen Geno arts as he attempted to repel the foe, but he wasn't able to heavily damage the flower god's body. Violet, since when have the flower gods added such a powerful deified to their ranks? Congratulations, a deified elite said to Violet with a cold smile. Violet shook his head. This is an Earl-class flower god. He is just a very ordinary person. He shouldn't be deified, and I do not know where such power came from. The deified elite started to say something else, but his face suddenly changed. Someone screamed aloud. All the flower gods are coming out of the earth. Han Sen could see what was happening down below, and indeed, all the flower gods were fighting their way out of the soil. A single one of these creatures was hard to deal with, but now, tens of thousands of the buried monsters were emerging. If they were all as scary as Bai Wanjie's enemy, then the situation had just taken a rather horrifying turn. But the elites didn't think that was likely. It simply wasn't possible. If a race all became deified, then deifieds wouldn't be special anymore. I want to see what is going on with these guys, a deified elite said while generating a substance chain. It became a scary bolt of lightning that arose from the ground to strike a flower god. Boom! The lightning slammed into the flower god, blowing the creature's armor to bits. But the body of the flower god was still sound. It was crystal clear like jade and wholly untarnished. The head of the flower god possessed a flower that appeared to be blooming at just the right moment. This guy, is he deified too? The faces of the elites were growing pale. Dragon One and Diarobber felt like something was wrong. Fall back. Something is wrong with these things. Diarobber called for his people to retreat. Bai Wanjie was even more certain that they needed to leave. He jumped out of the fray, looked around, and saw the girl in the sky. He flew up to her and shouted at the little girl, saying, "Great Aunt, something is wrong. This is too dangerous. We have to go." But before Bai Wanjie could drag the girl away, the flower god he had been fighting with leapt after him. Arg! A king was torn in half by a flower god woman. His blood and guts were spilled everywhere, leaving a chilling pool of viscera on the colorful field. Right now, the flower gods that came out of the ground all had deified powers, regardless of their age or gender. And they didn't speak after they emerged, either. They were enraged, and they mindlessly attacked anything in front of them. Pang! Xie Qing King punched a flower godman in the face. The force of his blow rebounded, and Xie Qing King was sent shooting away like a meteor. The bones in his hand were shattered. F***CK. What the hell is going on? How can this guy have deified power and speed? His voice was drowned out by other sordid screams. The whole of the space garden echoed with the sounds of terrified cries. Deified elites like Dragon, one could barely keep their own fear in check. The kings weren't faring too well, and they were falling one by one to the flower gods. They weren't fast or powerful enough to fight back, and neither could they flee. The flower god people had all sorts of flowers on their heads. They were killing everyone they could reach. Where is Violet? Han Sen ran next to Xie Qing King. He swung his fist and punched away the flower god that was coming for Xie Qing King. The flower god that was punched by Han Sen, although it flew away with a cavity in its chest, didn't even seem to notice the pain. It was like the creature didn't know that it had been injured. It just got up and started running back at them. I don't see him. He was right here, but now he is gone, Xie Qing King said as he fell back away from the fight. Something is very wrong with the flower gods. We shouldn't stay here, though. We should get out of here as soon as we can. Han Sen pulled Xie Qing King away, wanting to lead him out of the space garden. Pang! Han Sen tried to fly out of the space garden, but he hit an unseen barrier. It bounced him and Xie Qing King back. Oh no! It is a space wall. Without the key to open the space wall, we cannot get through. Brute force won't get us through, no matter how much power we throw at it, Han Sen said with a frown. A minute. If I became deified, I could punch them all to death and we wouldn't have to flee, Xie Qing King said with a streak of bitter depression. Now isn't the time to whine about what we can't do. We have to find Violet. He's the only person who can get us out of here. Han Sen used his Dongxian area to the max of his abilities. He scoured the whole of the space garden, trying to locate Violet. It was a mess down there. Every elite was in a similar situation to Han Sen, and none of them could escape. They had to fight the flower gods or die trying. But the flower gods all held the power of deified elites. They were all so strong. The king-class nobles didn't stand a chance against such powerful enemies. They were being torn apart where they stood. Even deified elites, against the 10,000 flower gods who were coming after them, were in grave danger. Lone Bamboo stood by himself, wielding a jade sword. He moved quickly through the flower gods, and wherever the jade sword went, a flower god was slashed and sent soaring. But even though his sword was powerful, he still couldn't kill the flower gods with it. Lone Bamboo wasn't the only one who was struggling either. Bai Wanjie, Dia Robber, and Dragon One were faring terribly too. No one was able to kill a flower god. Kacha, Bai Wanjie used a deified weapon to slice straight through a flower god's brain. But even though its bisected brain and body fell into the soil, the creature healed so fast that the process could be seen with the naked eye. The creature was back on its feet in moments. That big space garden was filled to the brim with the acoustics of killing. The kings were basically all dead, and the deified elites themselves were not faring very well. Deified blood was everywhere. Let's go. Han Sen looked at Lone Bamboo. The talented Sky still had the power to fight, so Han Sen wasn't too worried about him. He grabbed Xie Qing King by the arm and flew tens of thousands of meters away, heading deeper into the space garden. The lower reaches of the space garden weren't too safe, either, but Han Sen had detected the presence of Violet somewhere around there. Han Sen sensed that Violet and a few other flower gods had survived the violent rapture, and they must have escaped to someplace below. A few of the flower gods emerged, and Han Sen swung his fists to punch them away like sandbags. Many of the enraged beings tried to stop them, but Han Sen couldn't be stopped. He fought his way through the space garden to reach the deepest recesses of the realm. He eventually came before a tree, and he struck the trunk, knocking a big hole in it. The tree was apparently hollow, and Han Sen hauled Xie Qing King inside with him. Once they were inside, flower gods that were chasing them backed off. This place seems weird, Xie Qing King said quietly as he followed. Indeed, it is weird, Han Sen agreed with a nod, glancing around warily. They were walking down a subterranean path, but the walls around them were not made of dirt or stone. They were very large vines that had woven themselves together like a solid wall. Furthermore, the vines were semi-transparent, and so they looked like blood vessels. Han Sen could barely make out the shape of the vines, but he could tell something was moving inside them. They hadn't walked for very long when they suddenly saw the space ahead of them start to widen. It led to a giant, empty void. Countless tendrils had gathered together to form the walls of that giant underworld. Han Sen found Violet and the other flower gods there. They were standing in front of a huge vine that connected the floor to the ceiling. Violet, you are a very evil man. Your tricks have brought harm to a lot of good people. Do you think you can get away with such acts in this universe? Han Sen asked, walking slowly up to Violet. But Violet and the others didn't even spare him a glance. Their hands were folded in a praying gesture, and they were mumbling something to themselves. Violet did answer him, though. He coldly said, "If we didn't do this, the flower gods would have become extinct. There would have been no future for our people." As Violet spoke, Han Sen and Xie King reached him. They looked at what he was keeping his attention on, and they saw a creature inside the pillar of tangled-up vines in the center of the enormous room. It was sitting there, and it looked like a giant. The creature had to have been 100 meters tall. Its entire body was like jade. The surface of its flesh shimmered like crystal. Tentacles coiled around its body, latching onto the creature in various places. They kept absorbing a substance or energy out of the giant. "What is it?" Han Sen asked, looking at the giant that looked like a jade statue. He felt a familiar presence from the giant. "He is God," Violet answered, his eyes looking very impassioned and earnest. "God? What kind of God is he?" Han Sen asked with a frown. "He has no tear. He isn't like those rubbish deified creatures. This is an actual God. It is God, and God can do anything." Violet's expression looked like that of a deranged madman. "How do you know he is really God?" Han Sen finally understood why that giant had a familiar presence. It was because, even though the being seemed to be dead, its body still had that feeling Han Sen despised. It wasn't really God. It was a god like King Jun. "I just know it," Violet coldly grunted. Then, he quickly explained, "The space garden you have come to know used to be a small Ganoderma lucidum. It was only the size of a man's hand. But due to an accident, the small Ganoderma lucidum spores landed on the god's dead body. It absorbed the god's power, and it has been growing all the way up until now. The Ganoderma lucidum's body became its own xenogeneic space, and it spawned so many xenogeneic plants. If this being is not a god, then what sort of creature's corpse could offer such power?" Han Sen looked at the jade giant. For all he knew, gods couldn't attack creatures of the universe. But also, the creatures of the world shouldn't be able to touch them, either. If that jade giant really was a god like King Jun, even if he died, it shouldn't be possible to use his corpse as a base that other beings could grow off of. What is this thing? Could it really be the corpse of a god? Han Sen's heart pounded as he tried to think. Before Han Sen could ask anything further, Violet kept on talking. He seemed pretty excited. "Our ancestors witnessed the beginning of the Ganoderma lucidum's parasitic claiming of the god's corpse, and they guarded this place with their lives. They tried to figure out what the god was, exactly, but they were never able to find out. Our race, however, started to grow many flowers on our heads. These flowers gave us the ability to evolve quickly. Although we have been developing quickly, we've been struggling to catch up to the other creatures of the universe, which have been evolving for billions of years. The speed of our development has accelerated dramatically, though. It was like a big jump for our people. After many generations of research, we finally found a way to absorb God's power directly. We just had to turn ourselves into plants. We have imitated the Ganoderma lucidum's parasitic claiming of the god's corpse, in a way. It absorbed the god's corpse's power, and we intend to do the same. I don't think that your plan is going all that well. Those flower gods have power, but it looks like they were driven insane in the process." Han Sen now understood why the flower gods suddenly possessed such frightening levels of power. It was due to them leeching off the god corpse's energy. Yes, but we can say that we succeeded as much as we can say we failed. We used the tentacles of the space garden to allow ourselves to absorb the god corpse's power faster. We don't need to eat the xenogeneic plants to gain God's power anymore. This way is faster, and our people are evolving much faster, which proves that our theory was correct. In the past, it was impossible for us to gain a deified elite. But right now, after directly absorbing the power from the god's corpse, everyone has started to become deified like it was the easiest thing in the world. As he said this, Violet's face was brimming with pride. But it is a shame. Right now, at this time, A complication has shown up in the bodies of most of my people. They cannot handle the power of the god, and so they have started to become plants. Even their thoughts are starting to decompose. They even buried themselves in the soil to behave more like a plant. But I am different. Why are you different? Han Sen knew this was the most important point. He stared at Violet, who was looking more insane with every minute that passed. Violet's face looked so prideful, it couldn't be described. I am the chosen one. I can accept God's power. I won't become a vegetable like the rest of my people. I do, however, have a minor issue. I have to pass a test that God himself gave me. What test? Han Sen asked, his expression remaining completely impassive. I need the genes of other creatures to keep myself from turning into a god. Violet turned to look at the giant jade god. His eyes looked very sincere as he spoke. Xie King laughed out loud. He lifted his lips and said, "You make it sound so good. I think you need the genes of other creatures to avoid turning into a vegetable. This is a test given to me by a god. It is the first step on my path of ascendance. The first step for me becoming a god," Violet said coldly. He didn't seem shaken or put off by Xie King's mockery. Han Sen was still a bit confused by all this, so he asked, "If you need the genes of other creatures, why aren't you gathering the genes from the creatures that are dying up above us? Why are you praying to the god down here?" Violet smiled and said, "I don't need to take part in the chaos on the surface. When you guys came down here, everything was settled. You guys will become the sacrifice to the god, and I will take his place. If I'm understanding you correctly, what you're saying is that you aren't the one who needs the genes. It's him, isn't it?" Han Sen asked, pointing at the giant jade god. "You are quite smart. The power of the god's corpse is too strong. If I absorb it immediately, my body won't be able to withstand its power. But if I let the god's corpse absorb the genes of other creatures, those genes might help to soften the god's energy. Then, I can absorb the power of the god's corpse. Once the power is diluted slightly, it shouldn't be as destructive to my body." It seemed like the plan had almost succeeded. Violet was in a good mood, and he clearly wanted someone else to appreciate how successful his plan had been. That was why he was taking the time to brag to Han Sen and Xie King. Han Sen sighed and shook his head. "You are pathetic. I didn't think you would be so stupid as to do something like this. You are about to become his sacrifice, too." Violet smiled and said, "I know what you mean, but that's impossible. When gods die, they die. It doesn't matter how powerful they were in life. Once they're dead, they're just inanimate objects. Are you sure that is true?" Han Sen kept an eye on the jade giant. He didn't think a god would die so easily. "Of course. I want to let him absorb the genes of other creatures, and I have expended a lot of effort making this happen. The more genes he has, the more power I will get." Violet sounded very confident. Han Sen didn't know if all the men who had fallen under a god's thumb were this dumb, but it was clear that Violet was completely convinced. It was like Violet was being sold as a slave. Yet he was taking pride in calculating how much he was worth. "Time is almost up. You guys should offer up your power for me to become a god." As Violet was speaking, a jade substance chain rose from his body. The purple flower on his head turned green and sparkled like a piece of crystal. Deified power is nothing special. When I become a god, I will show the universe the true meaning of power. True god deifieds will be eliminated on a whim. The very high, ancient gods and extreme kings will be wiped out. The only high race in the universe will be the flower gods. I will be the leader of the universe. Violet's eyes were brimming with passion. What a naive kid. You should wait until you've become a god to make proclamations like that. Xie King quickly retreated. Then, he shouted at Han Sen, "Brother, I will leave you to deal with this psycho. Get rid of him. I don't want to become food." "Since when did you learn how to fall back?" Han Sen thought that was strange. Xie King had retreated. That had never been the man's style before. "It would be stupid to fight when I know the likelihood of my death is very high." Xie King lit up a cigar and clamped it between his teeth as he spoke to Han Sr. "I'm not deified yet, so I will let you perform. Enjoy the moment before I catch up with you. When I become deified, your time to shine will be up." This guy is becoming more and more human. Han Sen looked at Xie King happily. When he was in the sanctuaries, he had been blinded by the need to fight. He would never have behaved so rationally. Teacher Xie, I like your comics, and I admire your talent a great deal. But real life is not a comic. Right now, Bai Wanjie and those other nobles are nothing compared to me. I am stronger. I am afraid your guard will be of no protection to you. As Violet spoke, his substance chains became green vines. They writhed like long dragons as they reached out for Han Sen. In the blink of an eye, Han Sen was trapped between the vines. He was wrapped up like filling in a dumpling. Teacher Xie, before I kill you, I will let you witness the power of a god. It is a shame you will be unable to draw this for one of your comics. Violet's eyes looked spaced out. The green vines were hollow like hoses, and they looked as if they were going to suck something out of Han Sen's body. God is above everything. God controls everything. God can take away everything. Although I am not God, I can take anyone's power for myself. Violet's face was full of haughty confidence as he finished boasting, but then his eyes widened. The green vines were attempting to suck Han Sen's power out of his body, but it wasn't working. Nothing was being drawn from him. That confused Violet a bit. Xie Qingqing laughed and said, I forgot to tell you, you aren't God yet. And even if you did become God, it would be pointless. That is because the guy in front of you is God's daddy. Even if you become God, you would still have to kneel before him. What are you talking about? Violet didn't even get the chance to finish his sentence. Pang! The green substance chains that had become vines were suddenly shattered. Han Sen walked safely out of their clutches. He looked at Violet and said, That was the breadth of your amazing god powers? Impossible. Even Bai Wanjie couldn't tear down my powers so easily. But you, who are you? Violet looked at Han Sen with shock. God's daddy, Han Sen said simply. He walked up to Violet, and his body was suddenly cloaked in half-transparent white armor. His form was wreathed in a white flame. Violet recomposed his power with the intent of fighting Han Sen, but when he generated his green substance chains, he froze. He was suddenly hanging in the air, and he couldn't move. It was like he had been pinned in space. You, who are you? Violet was shocked as he realized he could no longer use his power. His body and his power were like a volcano that was ready to erupt, but he couldn't quite release an attack. Han Sen kept walking forward. The Dongxian area controlled the universal cogwheels of the encompassing zone. Unless Violet's power was stronger than his, the flower god wouldn't be able to use his universal cogwheel. He wouldn't be able to unleash his power. Violet's eyes opened so wide that they seemed to be on the verge of popping out of their sockets. But no matter how much strength he used, he still couldn't unleash the power that was brimming within him. He could only watch Han Sen approach. Violet tried to shy back from Han Sen, but he had lost all control of his body. Han Sen continued to approach him with the placidity of an all-powerful god. Just as Han Sen was about to reach Violet, the flower on Violet's head suddenly flashed with light. Many green sproutlings surged out of Violet's scalp and wrapped down around his body like jade tentacles. The vines formed a green set of armor. Catcha! Violet's body finally moved. The green air around his body was burning, and he was finally able to unleash his power. His emerald eyes peered through the vine helmet's slit. They were looking right at Han Sen. Should I call you Violet or God now? Han Sen asked, stopping in his tracks as he carefully examined Violet in his vine armor. My name is Skyvine Radish, said Violet from within his armor. Although his voice hadn't changed, his tone and inflection sounded different. It was just a small change, but it was enough to make him come across as a different person. You really are a god? Han Sen asked, raising an eyebrow at Skyvine Radish. I guess, Skyvine Radish said dispassionately. A god that can satisfy one's wishes? Han Sen asked again. No, Skyvine Radish's answer surprised Han Sen. Skyvine Radish went on to say, My god body was almost destroyed in a god battle. I don't have the power to fulfill your wishes. Of course, if you guys can help me by making a wish that isn't too difficult to fulfill, then I can give it a shot. I could, for instance, level you up once so you can become a transmutation deified. You need power to fulfill wishes? In reality, don't those wishes only benefit gods like you? Han Sen sneered at Skyvine Radish. Now, He knew for sure that Skyvine Radish was just like King June. He was an empty god, but he looked damaged. Otherwise, he never would have gotten himself into this situation. Skyvine Radish's eyes shone with a green light, and he asked, "Who are you?" "I'm the guy who will kill you." Han Sen suddenly exploded with his own power. He cast his Dongshin powers and had them firing on all cylinders. He threw a punch at Skyvine Radish. The white phoenix flames licked hungrily around Han Sen's hand. Skyvine Radish didn't show any indication that he intended to step back. Instead, with amazing speed, he reached out his hand and grabbed Han Sen's fist. Han Sen gathered up power to attack again, but it was blocked by his enemy. "Although I am heavily injured in borrowing a low-levels body, pathetic creatures like you can't hope to compete," Skyvine Radish proclaimed in a cold, distant voice. But the next second, Skyvine Radish let go of Han Sen's fist as if he had been electrified. He stumbled backward, raising and clutching the hand he had used to grab Han Sen's fist. His hand was burning with a white fire. "Phoenix flame. Are you a phoenix?" "No, obviously not." Skyvine Radish looked at Han Sen in shock. His face was wrought with confusion. The phoenix flame refused to be extinguished, and it burned farther and farther across the god's body. In seconds, the god's entire arm was covered in flames. Han Sen hadn't expected his phoenix flame to be that powerful. His full power attack had been blocked by Skyvine Radish, but his enemy hadn't been able to do anything to douse the phoenix fire. The man could only watch his body smolder and burn. "Regrettably for you, you aren't a true phoenix. If you were, this fight would be quite annoying for my damaged body," Skyvine Radish said to himself as he watched his burning arm. The phoenix fire was spreading all across his body, turning his form momentarily white. It was very strange to see. The phoenix fires were burning brightly, but after they passed over Skyvine Radish, only the green vine armor was burned away. The body that the god had taken from Violet was left undamaged. When the phoenix flames disappeared, Violet's body was left looking perfect. Not even a single strand of his hair was singed. The vine armor encasing his body, however, was gone. The only thing that was missing from Violet's body was that flower atop his head. Beneath the ravaging fires of the phoenix, even that flower had been turned to ash. Han Sen could feel the presence of Violet's body change. What Han Sen now sensed was different from when Violet had been in control of himself, but it wasn't the presence of Skyvine Radish either. Regardless, Violet didn't have his deified power anymore. Han Sen could feel his enemy's power fading and becoming insignificant. He was no longer even king class. Why is the Phoenix's power so strange? It didn't hurt Violet. Is that a coincidence? Or is that how it works? Han Sen's heart mulled over the conundrum. Han Sen didn't have time to think through the matter thoroughly, though. He ignored the currently unconscious Violet and instead looked at the giant, jade god beyond the vines. Clearly, this was Skyvine Radish's actual body, which had been damaged long ago. According to what Han Sen knew, gods were unable to directly harm beings of the universe, and the beings of the universe couldn't harm them either. But this god body was clearly some sort of exception to that rule. How about we make a trade? The giant, jade eyes of the being were still shut. Its lips didn't move, but even so, a voice bellowed through the air and rang in Han Sen's ears. "I don't make deals with gods," Han Sen said flatly. Then he threw a punch at the jade giant. Pang! Han Sen's fist struck the jade giant's eye. It made the sound of jade stone being broken. Han Sen had used all his power, but the jade giant's body didn't move. The phoenix flame burned on the jade giant's skin, but it was only a light for a brief time before it was extinguished. It didn't seem to be capable of burning the creature's skin. If you really were a phoenix, you probably would stand a chance of harming my god body. But you only have the phoenix's flames. As you can see, that doesn't work on me. Why don't we just chill for a minute and talk? Said Skyvine Radish's voice again. Han Sen paid little attention to what the creature was saying, though. This might be his final chance to defeat a god. Who knew if he would ever get another opportunity like this one? Right now, Skyvine Radish just wanted to talk things over. He could make himself heard to anyone in the chamber, but he couldn't move. His body was badly damaged, and even after all the years his remains had been here, it had yet to recover. Han Sen kept on punching Sky Vine Radish's body, and the god couldn't so much as twitch in retaliation. However, the only thing that Han Sen's phoenix flame could do was scorch a small part of its skin. "I told you, you cannot hurt my body," Sky Vine Radish said imperiously. "That might not be true." Han Sen retrieved his phoenix feather from Destiny's tower. He gripped it in his hand like a sword, then slashed across Sky Vine Radish's body. Screech! The white flames formed the shape of a phoenix feather. Han Sen thrust his weapon halfway into Sky Vine Radish's body. The resulting wound showed that Sky Vine Radish's flesh was green like jade, and green blood began to leak steadily from the opened flesh. Han Sen stared with wide eyes at the wound that his phoenix feather had just delivered. Up to this point, Han Sen had completely failed to injure the god. Even his phoenix fires had only burned briefly across the monster's skin. But now, the phoenix feather was able to perforate Sky Vine Radish's indestructible god body. The white phoenix fires ravaged the wound. This injury was so small that it clearly mattered little to Sky Vine Radish and his god body, but to Han Sen, it was a very important step on the path to taking down Sky Vine Radish completely. If he was unable to harm the god body at all, how could he even think about killing a god? Han Sen had now focused his awareness on the phoenix flame that the phoenix had given him. He had originally wanted to get rid of it, but he hadn't expected that the phoenix flame used in conjunction with the phoenix feather would unleash such devastating power. It was able to slice open a god's body. But right now, Han Sen didn't have the time to sit idly by and think through all the ramifications of what he had just done. He continued to swing his phoenix feather with the ferocity of a furious storm cloud. Sword lights flew everywhere, slashing here and there across Sky Vine Radish's god body. As Han Sen cut Sky Vine Radish again and again, the flow of blood increased. "Stop, or I will bury you." Sky Vine Radish bellowed angrily. Han Sen ignored the warning. He kept slashing Sky Vine Radish's god body without relenting. He let the god blood splatter him. "This is blasphemy against God. Your sons and your grandsons and the rest of your filthy race will be cursed now and forever. Great disaster will fall upon you." Sky Vine Radish released an enraged roar into the sky, but over time, it slowly turned into a scream. And still, he couldn't move. Han Sen continued to slash the god body like a madman. Although each slash only cut a little bit into the god's flesh, after Han Sen slashed his enemy 1,000 times, then 10,000 times, he was able to open Sky Vine Radish's flesh to the bone. God blood poured out. "Catcha!" As Sky Vine Radish's voice kept up an unending stream of curses and profanity, Han Sen lost count of how many times he had slashed the god. But before long, he was able to lop the god's head off. That big jade head fell to the ground, creating a big crater in the earth when it landed. The jade skull's face was turned up toward the sky. The eyes that had been closed were now finally open. They glared at Han Sen right before the head shouted, "Gods can never die. Today, you have destroyed my god body, but I will ensure that your sons and your grandsons pay me back millions and billions of times more. All the women in your race will become whores, and all the men will become slaves." Catcha! Han Sen thrust his feather sword into the god's eye, blinding it. God blood sprayed up like a freshwater spring, splattering all over Han Sen's body. Han Sen had nothing to be afraid of. Han Sen knew that his family was meant to fight these gods. He would not be intimidated by the empty threat of some ominous curse. Han Sen had seen how Sky Vine Radish treated the flower gods, so he knew that the gods never treated the people of the universe as equals. Gods thought of the people in this universe as little more than livestock. They would kill and eat the people that Han Sen knew for nutrition. If gods can eat people, then why can't people eat gods? Today, I, Han Sen, will be the first person to dine on the flesh of a god. Han Sen licked the god blood around his lips. It felt as hot as boiling water. Deified gene +1. God body evolution +1. Just one drop of blood can raise my tally by one whole deified gene. No wonder you are considered a god. Han Sen looked at his fallen enemy with disdain. He didn't stop moving his sword. He kept slashing the corpse over and over. Every slash parted flesh and broke bones. There was a reason that these gods were creatures of legend. Even with a heavily damaged body, it was still so strong. Its strength was difficult to comprehend. Han Sen had decapitated the creature and perforated its heart, but he still couldn't kill it. I don't believe you can still live if I wholly dismember your god body. Han Sen continued to hack his way through the creature's flesh. He made sure to consume the blood that sprayed him. It was like he was swallowing lava into his belly. Han Sen felt as if his entire body was on fire. It was so hot, he wanted to take off his skin just to cool down a little. Deified gene +1. Deified gene +1. The announcements kept adding up. A single drop of god blood granted a deified gene. The body of a god could bring an unimaginable bounty of wealth to someone like Han Sen. God evolution 100% can evolve. Finally, Han Sen heard the announcement that he had been waiting for. But he didn't have the time to evolve right now. He was determined to kill Skyvine Radish and do it soon. He couldn't give the monster any chance to reassemble itself and regain its fighting strength. Dong! Han Sen had been cutting his way through Skyvine Radish's giant skeleton, but his blade had come up against a bone that it couldn't cut through. The other bones had snapped with relative ease, but he couldn't even leave a mark on this one. Han Sen was shocked, and he leaned closer to the bone to get a better look. Han Sen didn't understand much about how these god bodies worked, but it was clear that this bone didn't resemble any of the structures in a human body. The bone snaked its way around the heart and lungs like a crooked vine. It was green, and it was only 2 meters long. A bone like that, in a giant god body like Skyvine Radish's, was truly tiny. Interestingly, the bone was shaped differently than the rest of the god's skeleton, as well. Although most of the bones looked like they were made of a green stone, this one was rather transparent. Inside that bone, it looked like there were strange symbols floating. The bone seemed like something out of a dream, some mysterious item that could exist only in Han Sen's imagination. Let's make a deal. If you stop this, I can help you conquer the universe. Skyvine Radish's voice quivered with something that resembled fear. Catcha! Han Sen acted as if he hadn't heard Skyvine Radish. He slashed at the bone that connected the giant's heart and lungs, and it was sliced open. Arg! Skyvine Radish screamed like his heart was being ripped out and his lungs torn open. He hadn't even moaned when his head was cut off, but now he was squealing like a pig. That must have been your weak spot. Han Sen grinned in delight. He swung his phoenix feather at the strange bone even faster. Every slash struck the tether between the bones, the flesh, and the organs. He cut that tether slowly. Skyvine Radish kept screaming and cursing Han Sen, but Han Sen remained undeterred. Han Sen might obey God, but not this sort of God. You will die. Skyvine Radish suddenly screamed when he saw that Han Sen was on the verge of slicing through the strange bone. His god body flashed with a green light. His flesh began to glow like superheated steel. Oh no! Han Sen suddenly understood what Skyvine Radish was doing. The god knew that he didn't stand a chance against Han Sen, so he was going to self-destruct. Han Sen couldn't stop the god from self-destructing, so he pushed himself to strike even faster with his sword. He wanted to dig out the bone before the monster blew itself up. But Skyvine Radish's body detonated far too quickly, and Han Sen didn't have enough time to cut the strange bone free. A scary power suddenly exploded from Skyvine Radish's god body. It was like a nuclear bomb going off. Boom! At the top of the space garden, a green light shot into the sky like a volcanic eruption. Once it entered the sky, it spread out and began to shower the area. The light rain rained down across the flower fields, and the xenogenic plants that touched the light rain started to grow at an accelerated rate. The whole of the space garden changed. It was like the sky and the earth had been flipped. Han Sen exited his super god spirit mode, and then he heard the announcement play in his head. Killed God's spirit. Obtained God's spirit. Found God's spirit gene. In the space garden, a green light fired into the sky like an erupting volcano. It made that whole area shake. In every corner of the Geno universe, a green tear became visible in space. It was like the very fabric of the universe had been wounded. BZZD. In that green, ripped space, A giant thing that looked like the temple of some ancient god emerged from the crack. The Geno Hall. The creatures of the universe, seeing the Geno Hall appear before them, looked confused. They raised their heads to stare uncertainly at the mysterious Geno Hall. No one had any idea why it had shown up. The Geno being scroll fights finished up not too long ago. Why is the Geno Hall appearing again? I bet some elite triggered the door for another lantern fight. I don't think so. Last time, when Kong Fei fought, there was a different feeling permeating the atmosphere. This feels like something else entirely. Back then, all the stars arose. But now, it looks like there is a wound in the universe itself. It feels different from the way it felt before. Yes, what is going on with the green crack? This is incredibly strange. I have never heard of something like this before. Seeing the green crack, I feel kind of sad. I want to cry. What is going on? On the peak of Empty Mountain, there was a woman with a holy horn rising from her head. She was standing next to a beast with green fur. They were looking out across the universe's green crack. Their gazes were oddly intense. It has finally appeared again. It has been 1 billion years since I was last able to witness the sadness of a god. I miss the era of Mountain Leader, the man who could go against the sky and kill gods, break the doors, and mark his place. He became a god spirit. It has been 1 billion years since someone did something like this. Today, I am able to witness God's sadness once more, the green-haired beast said. He looked at the sight, an oddly conflicted expression on his face. I don't know who could go against the sky and slay a god right now, though, and even claim their god spirit seat. The horned woman frowned. This is a good thing no matter who has done it. It proves that the Geno Hall suppression is not infallible. Those gods are no longer omnipotent opponents. We can slay them and take their thrones, the green-haired beast said. It looked at the sleeping gold beast and said, this might be Empty Mountain's chance. With Little Mountain Leader here, nothing can prevent Empty Mountain from rising. Hearing the 3 words, Little Mountain Leader, the woman's serious face showed a rare smile. The blood of the Little Mountain Leader isn't pure, so its potential is unpredictable, but it can certainly become a true god. And then, it will be able to go against the sky and become something even greater. It will go into the Geno Hall as Mountain Leader did. People will then know that Empty Mountain is still here, and the race is composed of invincible blood. Inside a scary red dwarf, there was a hidden palace. Within that palace, there were many creatures that looked like humans. They were staring at the god's sadness in space. If Han Sen had been there, he would have been shocked to find God's retribution amongst them. He was a member of Blood Legion. What we knew would happen has finally come to pass. For the first time since Sacred, a war of gods has finally started anew. It is a shame that we haven't sufficiently prepared yet. A man with blue eyes stared at the sky and sighed. Although we aren't yet prepared, it isn't as if we don't stand a chance. Blood Legion has remained hidden for too long. It is time to fight the god spirits in the sky. Perhaps. The blue-eyed man looked at the green crack in the distance. No one could tell what he was thinking. On a small planet that belonged to the 1,000 treasures, an old man who was holding a cloth flag frowned and looked up at the green crack in space. He spoke to himself, saying, this shouldn't be happening. Time isn't yet up. The Geno Hall's bindings should still be in place. Was someone able to kill a god right now? Weird. That shouldn't be possible. On countless mysterious places in the universe, scary elites stared at the green crack and the Geno Hall that was slowly appearing. All of them were thinking about different things. Some were very excited. Some were suspicious. Some of them were only watching. They were watching in the hopes of finding out who had managed to kill a god spirit and take the god spirit's place. The Geno Hall had completely revealed itself now. The whole universe went pitch black, and only the green light shone in space with its beautiful vacillations. The door of the ancient, mysterious Geno Hall looked like it hadn't been opened for 1 billion years. Today, it was finally opened again. This was different from Kong Fei's lantern fight, and it was different from ancient water god's fight to break through the door. This Geno Hall's door was completely open. Any creature from any corner of the universe could see what was inside the door now. Inside the door was a giant statue that looked like it had been made from jade. Although it was just a statue, It was too intimidating to be described. The mere sight of it weighed on the mind like an anvil. When creatures with weaker minds looked at the statue, they found themselves kneeling before they even knew what had happened. But right now, blood was trickling down from the statue's eyes. The sight filled everyone who saw it with sadness. It was intimidating, but it didn't feel as threatening as one might have expected. With many creatures watching, that statue slowly came out of the Geno Hall. A webwork of cracks covered it. When the statue passed the threshold of the Geno Hall's door, it shattered into a countless number of pieces that scattered everywhere. The sky shook as if a thunderstorm was rocking space itself. It was like the sky was crying over the death of a god spirit. Who will be the new god spirit? Sky Palace leader squinted his eyes. He stared at the Geno Hall with its open door. A statue had departed the Geno Hall. There was an empty god slot up there now, and there was guaranteed to be a new master to claim the space. Sky Palace leader wanted to know who, in that era, could go against the sky and slay a god. The other people of Sky Palace felt the same way, too. They all stared at the Geno Hall door, and they waited for the elite who killed a god spirit to ascend to their rightful platform as a new god. But after waiting for a long time, they still hadn't seen a new being fly toward the Geno Hall to claim their seat. A voice boomed from the Geno Hall, sounding clearly across the nothingness of space. Skyvine Radish has fallen. The god's personality is lost. Whoever has the personality of Skyvine Radish can claim the god spirit seat. Every person in the universe was shocked. A god spirit had fallen, and the god's personality had vanished. They had never heard of something like this happening before. The elite that killed Skyvine Radish should have taken their god personality to the Geno Hall and become a god themselves. What does it mean for a god's personality to be lost? Does it mean that the elite killed a god spirit and didn't take the god's personality? No way. Such a powerful thing. Why did he not take it? Maybe the elite died alongside Skyvine Radish. It is possible. The hearts of many people were pounding in their chests. If the elite and the god really had died together, then anyone could find where the god died, claim the personality, and become a god themselves. As people all across the universe found their minds racing, the door shut, and the Geno Hall returned to the nether. But the sadness in the sky still lingered like a green mark. It didn't fade. Han Sen was holding a bone that looked like a jade vine. He looked at it with curiosity. When Skyvine Radish self-destructed, Han Sen used his super god spirit body to survive the scary self-destructive powers. The things around him were not so lucky. Everything else had been destroyed by that explosion. There was not even dust left. Only that jade-like bone remained. It was unharmed by that manic explosion. It was the bone Han Sen assumed to be Skyvine Radish's weakness and the god spirit gene that was announced in his head. If I knew Skyvine Radish's self-destruction would have evaporated all of his blood, I would have drunk my fill, Han Sen said with a greedy tone of voice. It was not easy to kill a god spirit, and now I am only walking away with a bone. Oh no. Did Brother King die in the explosion? Han Sen thought of Xie Qing King, and nothing pleasant came to mind. Before Han Sen went looking for him, he saw Xie Qing King emerge from a cave with a face covered in dust. He flew toward Han Sen and said, "That thing was so strong. It almost killed me." Han Sen felt some relief. Fortunately, you were quick to escape the radius of the detonation. Otherwise, not even a deified elite would have been able to withstand that self-destructive explosive. Seeing that Xie Qing King was fine, Han Sen now had the time to check out his Sea of Soul. There was a giant spirit body that looked like jade. It was similar to Skyvine Radish's god body, but Skyvine Radish had a solid body. This was just a spirit body. When ordinary xenogeneics die, they leave behind beast souls, Han Sen said while he examined the spirit body's information. Skyvine Radish left behind a god spirit. I wonder what the difference is. Sky Radish God. Destroyed class god spirit. What does it mean for it to be a destroyed class? Han Sen's head was filled with questions. The levels of a god spirit seemed to be different from beast souls. There was no defined type, but there was a class. This was a destroyed class. Han Sen tried to summon his Sky Radish God and see what it could do. Sky Radish God's giant god spirit body suddenly appeared in front of Han Sen. Its presence was like that of a flooding beast. It was immeasurably scary. It was like it could blow up the world with one punch. Is this thing like a pet beast soul? Han Sen's heart jumped. He commanded Sky Radish God to punch a wall in front of him. Sky Radish God adhered to Han Sen's thoughts and did what he was told. The green god's spirit light on his body shone as he threw a punch into the wall. With its power, it was going to blow up the entire space garden. Han Sen was worried about Space Garden being destroyed, but he was immediately frozen. Sky Radish God's power went through the wall, but it did not do anything to it. Even Sky Radish God's body went through the wall as if it was a phantom. Are these god spirits like gods? Can they not touch the substances of the universe? Han Sen tried to repeat the action a few times. No matter how strong Sky Radish God was or how much power it unleashed, it could not harm the smallest leaf. Han Sen was left fairly disappointed. I thought this was some good stuff, but it can't touch anything. This is rubbish. Han Sen suddenly thought, but that can't be right. If the god spirit was just like the other gods and could not touch or harm the substances of the universe, it proves they were the same kind. Does that mean the god spirit can hurt the gods? Han Sen was thinking that might be possible, but there weren't any gods willing to stand up to him. He wanted to try his hand at guessing. But why was Sky Vine Radish's actual body able to be harmed by ordinary creatures like me? Was it really because he was injured? Or is there another reason? Han Sen continued to guess. He thought this entire thing was not that simple. Xie Qingqing flew over to Han Sen and looked at him with confusion. What are you doing? You keep moving your legs and hands. Did the explosion break your brain? Don't you see it? Han Sen was confused too. Xie Qingqing looked at Han Sen and asked, See what? Do you mean the green vine that looks like a spear? The one you are holding? Don't you see him? Han Sen pointed to where Sky Radish God was. What? Who? Is there someone here? Xie Qingqing reached his hand out to touch whatever it was, but there was no solid surface. His hand went right through the Sky Radish God's god spirit body. There is a weird beast soul that you cannot see or touch. It came from the guy who called himself a god. Han Sen explained the Sky Radish God's situation to him. When he heard that, Xie Qingqing was momentarily silent before saying, So, do the god spirits look similar to the gods? Maybe it is just as you thought. Perhaps you can use them to go against the gods. I sure hope so.
Han Sen nodded.
He had been feeling terrible about his inability to fight the gods and how he always had to be passive before them. If the god spirit was able to fight the gods, it would be a beast soul he would cherish more than any other. Let's not talk about that. Xie Qingqing looked around and said, We made too much noise down here. I am afraid it is only a matter of time before people come. Let's just leave.
Han Sen nodded.
He put the god spirit gene bone inside his destiny's tower and committed to an escape alongside Xie Qingqing. After they left, they saw the Geno Hall had been revealed. Han Sen heard a voice coming from the Geno Hall. He quickly realized that the god personality the Geno Hall was referring to could have been the god spirit gene bone. Han Sen was not going to take the god spirit gene to the Geno Hall. He wanted to know more about the bone first. He thought the space garden would have been destroyed because of Skyvine Radish self-destructing. When he looked closer, Han Sen noticed the space garden had not been destroyed. It had actually become bigger. He did not know how much bigger it was, but the plant xenogeneics in the flower fields had mutated. They had become quite big and weird. Not far ahead, Han Sen saw a big tree that looked like a strange snake. It was releasing a scary presence. He was able to tell that it was a deified class. It seems that after Skyvine Radish's power exploded and spread, it benefited the xenogeneic plants all around here. It has made them swiftly evolve. Now, the space garden is worth more than the old space garden. It will be perfect for us to build a base here. It is a shame Violet was blown to bits. That means we have missed out on the key to access the space garden. Xie Qingqing looked sad as he spoke. There must be a way. In Han Sen's mind, he started to think, the space garden itself is a giant Ganoderma lucidum xenogeneic. If it is alive, that means we can talk, and I can convince it. But I am afraid this Ganoderma lucidum's intelligence might be low. If it doesn't understand words, it might be difficult to convince. While Han Sen was thinking, he heard the sounds of people coming from the left. They were headed for the battlefield. The people fighting were a group of extreme kings. They were engaged in a battle against a dozen flower gods. The flower gods had not recovered after Skyvine Radish's death. They were just as crazy as ever. They were still wildly powerful. As they went, their bodies kept changing. They had become extremely strong. When Bai Wanjie unleashed his power against a flower god, he could only send them flying. The flower gods were never slow in catching up. Bai Wanjie, who was a deified elite, was the only one who could do that. The others from the Extreme King were doing even worse. There weren't many of the Extreme King following Bai Wanjie. Most of them looked to be riddled with injuries. It appeared as if many had been killed. The girl Han Sen had spoken to before made strange movements. She was able to move perfectly when the flower gods chased her, and she was able to avoid taking damage from the fiends. Since they were not able to kill the flower gods, Bai Wanjie and the others could only flee. They did not have time to fight them face to face. Han Sen did not have much reason to be interested in their struggle. Plus, they were people from the Extreme King. Han Sen and the Extreme King had a deep-seated grudge with each other. Han Sen considered himself nice enough for not making things worse for them. Either way, he was certainly not going to make an effort to rescue the Extreme King's crown prince. When Bai Wanjie and the others walked past them, a few of the flower gods noticed Han Sen and Xie Qing King, then went to them. Bai Wanjie and the girls saw Xie Qing King and Han Sen, but they did not bring the flower gods to them on purpose. Bai Wanjie did not believe people could kill those flower gods, so he did not expect Han Sen would be able to do much of anything. They didn't draw the flower gods to them on purpose. When the few flower gods noticed Han Sen and Xie Qing King, they went after them. The girl shouted in Han Sen's direction, "Why are you frozen there? Hurry up and run." She had just finished shouting when she saw Han Sen throw a punch toward one of the flower gods. She could not help but shout, "Is this guy crazy? If he is trapped here and has a burden, he cannot even hope to escape." Pang! While the girl was thinking, Han Sen's fist powered into the face of one of the flower gods. The strong power blasted the flower god a few hundred feet away. It broke through many trees before collapsing to the ground. That power is unbelievable. The girl was shocked. Han Sen's punch was far stronger than what Bai Wanjie was able to do, which surprised her a great deal. Even if he is strong, it is futile. The flower gods can never die. Never. The girl was frozen. Her eyes were opened wide in sheer disbelief. The flower god that had been punched away by Han Sen was burning with a white flame. The flower gods had been fighting against them for a while. They knew the bodies of the flower gods were obscenely strong. Even if they were hurt, they quickly recovered. They did not seem to know the meaning of pain. Bai Wanjie had used many different Geno arts to punch them away. He had done this several times. All the different powers used hadn't been effective on them. He had not been able to make a single one scream. Now, the flower god was screaming and rolling around on fire. It squealed like a pig getting slaughtered. Han Sen and the other flower gods were not content to sit still. Han Sen's body was like a swimming dragon. He punched each of the flower gods once. Within the blink of an eye, they all fell on the floor. It was different from the flower gods Bai Wanjie had knocked to the ground. The flower gods Han Sen punched down were unable to get back up. They were all writhing around on the floor, burning due to the pain inflicted by the fire. It made Bai Wanjie and the others feel very weird. The scorching white flame was burning them, but the bodies of the flower gods did not look to be incinerated. Either way, the flowers atop their heads were rendered little more than ash. When the flowers were gone, so too was the fire. The few flower gods fell to the ground without any energy. They stopped screaming. They refused to get up and continue their assault. Bai Wanjie and the others sensed that the presence of those bodies had been weakened. They were not deified anymore. They were only king class at best. "What is that fire?" the girl asked with surprise. Clearly, Han Sen's power was the right remedy for sorting out those flower gods. "Thank you for helping me out." Bai Wanjie brought his people over to see Han Senator. He drew the final few leftover flower gods over, too. Han Sen quickly dropped all of the flower gods onto the ground. Again, they writhed around in pain due to the fire. Upon seeing that, The extreme king people were shocked. They had been chased by the flower gods for a long time and run out of options. They thought they would for sure bite it in the end. After all, many people already had. The monsters, which had once been thought invulnerable, were killed by Han Sen with ease. They could scarcely believe it. That was especially true for the extreme king girl. She looked at Han Sen weirdly, as if they did not know each other. "You are welcome, my crown prince," Xie Qing King said with a smile. "We are all trapped here, and so it is only right that we help each other out." Bai Wanjie thanked Xie Qing King again. He looked at Han Sen and said, "I wonder what your name is." "San Mu," Han Sen coldly answered. But he did not look at Bai Wanjie. Bai Wanjie had no idea who he was. It seemed as if he really wanted to ally with Han Sen, as he went on to profusely compliment him. Han Sen just ignored him completely. He didn't say a word back. "San Mu is always like this. Please, do not mind him, Mr. Crown Prince." Xie Qing King looked down at the flower gods without their flowers. They were not dead. They eventually staggered up to their feet. Bai Wanjie and the others from the Extreme King were going to kill them, but the flower gods walked in front of Han Sen and kneeled. They said, "Thank you for saving us. Please show us mercy and save the rest of our people." Han Sen did not speak. He looked at Xie Qing King nearby. Xie Qing King cleared his throat and replied, "We can save you, but what can you reward us with? If you two are willing to save our endangered people, we are willing to share the space garden," an old flower god said. Xie Qing King smiled and said, "I don't like sharing things." The faces of the flower gods changed. They understood what Xie Qing King meant. "If you guys can save my people, the whole of the flower god race will be willing to serve you." It was still the old flower god doing the talking. "Do you stay true to your word?" Xie Qing King looked the old man up and down. "Yes, I am the leader of the flower gods," the old man said with a sigh. Han Sen and Xie Qing King looked at each other. They sensed how happy they both were. They had broken their shoes, unable to find what they were looking for. Now, they had achieved it all with ease. Bai Wanjie wanted the flower gods, but he did not know who Han Sen was, and he was surprised by Han Sen's strange power. He did not dare fight him. He just watched Xie Qing King claiming the flower gods. The flower god people had been controlled by Sky Vine Radish, but their minds were not consumed. After the Phoenix Flame removed Sky Vine Radish's power, they returned to normal with full memory regarding what had happened. They knew if the flower gods were unable to overcome the curse, they would end up like mindless zombies. Now, the space garden had undergone major changes. The whole place was occupied by scary deified plant xenogenics. With the power of the flower gods, they could not cultivate and develop the place. Therefore, they had to request the aid of Han Sen. First, only Han Sen was able to remove the curse plaguing the flower gods and free them from their doom. Second, Xie Qing King and Han Sen did not have notable backgrounds. Via them, the flower gods might be able to prosper in the future. It is no use just saying that. Xie Qing King looked at flower god leader and asked, "How are you going to make me believe the rest of the flower gods will be willing to follow us? You two, please follow me. I have something to give you. After receiving it, you can completely control the space garden." The flower god leader had no hesitation in telling Han Sen that. Xie Qing King and Han Sen looked at each other. Xie Qing King nodded and said, "Okay, if the flower gods really want to serve us, we will try to save the rest of the flower gods." They were ready to leave with flower god leader when Bai Wanjie smiled, stepped forward, and said, "Teacher Xie, since we are trapped here and cannot leave, we would like to help. If Mr. Crown Prince wants to help, please wait here. If there is something we need, we will come to you." Xie Qing King was not dumb. He wasn't going to let Bai Wanjie and the others see the secrets of the space garden. "If things are like that, we will wait here for your good news." Bai Wanjie did not try to push it. He let Han Sen and the others go off with the flower god. After waiting for Han Sen and the others disappeared, the girl asked Bai Wanjie, "Nephew, why did you not kill them?" "The flower gods and Xie Qing King are not scary, but San Mu is an enigma," Bai Wanjie replied. "His power is like the legendary Phoenix Flame. If it is a Phoenix Flame, he must have a true god Phoenix supporting him. That is one of the sacred beasts. It is not something we can dare try to provoke." No matter which way you look at him, he doesn't look like a phoenix, the girl said. I thought the 4 sacred beasts were killed in a god war. That is why it is so scary, Bai Wanjie said. The 4 sacred beasts and 10 generals were killed in all the legends. These days, they seem to keep appearing again and again. Just now, a god spirit was killed. We should be careful. We do not want to get dragged into this grand, frightening conspiracy. You talk so much, but I think you're just scared of San Mu, the girl said with a smile. I guess. After all, he is a scary bloke. If he has the legendary phoenix flame, I do not think I can fight him. Bai Wanjie was fine with being honest. Humph. The girl coldly grunted and said nothing. The space garden was 10 times bigger than they initially believed. Although the landscape had not changed much, there were many changes in the details. The scariest thing about all of it was the fact that the ordinary plant xenogeneics in the flower fields had all received a large boost in their growth. Some of them were now deified. As they traveled across the flower fields, they saw the fields had a xenogeneic with the upper body of a witch and the lower body of a big flower. Deified plant xenogeneic. Han Sen looked at that strange witch flower. He saw a weird, plant substance chain on her. She was obviously a deified class being. Has the queen flower already evolved that much? The space garden had many plant xenogeneics on the same level as the queen flower. If they saw boosts like the queen flower, the space garden will be a very dangerous place now. The flower god leader had a complicated look on his face. After he spoke, the queen flower opened her eyes. She stared at Han Sen and the others. Her weird purple eyes were glowing. Her purple-red flower clothes were waving in the breeze. She raised her jade arms. Suddenly, the garden had many thorny vines shoot out of the ground. They were like demon dragons headed for Han Sen and the others. Han Sen coldly grunted. He generated a phoenix flame and punched forward. The white flame went right past the flower vine. It was not able to harm the flower vine at all. Oh, **T. Does the phoenix flame only work on skyvine radish? Can't it hurt these vines? Han Sen was shocked. Those vines were covering the sky and the ground, and they were all coming. The faces of Flower God Leader and others changed. They did not believe Han Sen had the chops to fight the Queen Flower. Han Sen's eyes looked cold, but he did not do anything. He merely coldly shouted, "Damn!" Then, his Dongxian area was cast around the vines of the flowers. They all stopped a few feet away from them. No matter how the Queen Flower shouted, the vines would not move. Han Sen did not use his phoenix flame. He teleported in front of the Queen Flower and punched the strange Queen Flower's body to blow her up. The Flower God Leader and the others were in shock. They thought, "I do not know who this person is. I really cannot tell how strong he is. I do not know if the flower gods serving him is a good or bad idea." For now, the flower gods were out of options. Aside from Han Sen, no other being was able to save the flower gods, which were being controlled. Deified xenogeneic hunted, Queen Flower. Deified xenogeneic gene found. There was no beast soul, and it made him feel ashamed. But the space garden had undergone many changes, and that managed to keep his spirits lifted. There were many plant xenogeneics in the space garden, which meant that the realm had a lot of resources to plunder. For Han Sen and the whole race, that was a good thing. Han Sen killed a few more mutated plant xenogeneics on the way, but he did not encounter any more deified xenogeneics. Under the guidance of the flower god leader, they arrived at a city made from vines. The vines used to build the city were once dead objects. Now, they were booming with the vibrance of a healthy life force. They grew green leaves and all sorts of flowers. The entire Vine City's aesthetic was given a big boost in the pretty department. It thrived with an unbridled life force. The flower gods were visibly surprised to see what had become of their city. With a wry smile, one of the flower gods said, "The space garden is living up to its name. It has become a garden. I love this beautiful garden city. I am going to live here." Xie Qing King expressed his love for that garden-like city. Pang! Suddenly, a fighting force erupted someplace in the distance. The flower god leader's face changed. Someone has invaded this land. The flower god treasure is placed. We need it to control the space garden. Han Sen frowned. He hastened his pace to reach the place the flower god leader had referred to. When Han Sen rushed to that location, he saw that 20 to 30 flower gods were no longer themselves. They were attacking a swordsman. That swordsman was clad in green attire, and he was doing fine despite the conditions of him being surrounded. No matter how strong the flower gods were, they could not lay a finger on his garments. Every sword strike unleashed could damage a flower god. Although the destructive power was not enough to kill the flower gods, they were able to make the flower gods lose their abilities of combat for a bit and fail to chase the swordsman. Lone Bamboo really is so powerful. Han Sen was shocked. He recognized the swordsman as no other than Lone Bamboo. Even though Lone Bamboo was strong, he did not have enough power to kill the flower gods. After all, they were creatures under the control of a god. They had special powers and were very difficult to kill. Han Sen pulled out his phoenix feather and flashed forward. It was one strike for one enemy. The flower gods struck by the phoenix feather burned. They were crying in pain on the floor. Not long later, the flowers on their heads turned to ash and their bodies returned to normal. "You have very powerful sword skills," Lone Bamboo said. "What is your name?" "Sanmu," Han Sen answered. Lone Bamboo was shocked. He looked at Han Sen with a weird face. There's no way this guy noticed something, Han Sen nervously thought. Lone Bamboo said nothing more. The flower god leader and the others assembled. They were gasping as they asked, "Lone Bamboo, did you get my flower seed?" Lone Bamboo smiled. "I have heard one of the elders of the race say the flower gods control the space garden through the use of a seed. I was going to go and claim it, but it is a shame that the location of the seed has been captured by a scary xenogeniac. Not even I can get inside there." "Xenogeniac? What xenogeniac?" The flower god leader was shocked. The location of the seed should not have had any plants or plant xenogeniacs around. Even if the space garden xenogeniacs had mutated, there should not have been anything in that particular location. I am not sure what kind of xenogeniac it is, but it is a kid in a red robe. He is bald and has a red mole on his head. Lone Bamboo described what the xenogeniac looked like and said that xenogeniac's power is weird. It can control the xenogeniac plants all around it. That place has been taken over by a dozen deified xenogeniac plants. I was unable to gain access. When the flower god leader heard what Lone Bamboo had to say, his face changed. He screamed and asked, "Could it be that the flower seed has mutated and become a xenogeniac? If that is true, then that is most terrible. What is the flower seed anyway?" Xie Qing King asked. The flower god leader knew there was no point in hiding things. He replied, "According to the records of my people, when the Ganoderma lucidum spores landed on the corpse of the god, it absorbed the god corpse's nutrients and transformed the space garden. As a matter of fact, the space garden is one giant Ganoderma lucidum xenogeniac. That flower seed came with the Ganoderma lucidum spore, but it did not grow. Even so, it had a weird connection with the Ganoderma lucidum. If you possess the seed, you can make the Ganoderma lucidum adhere to your commands. If the flower seed has mutated, we cannot control the Ganoderma lucidum xenogeniac anymore. It will not just be the space garden that falls. There is no telling if we can make it out of here alive. In that case, it is worth going to check out what exactly happened." Han Sen was not worried. Even if the flower seed had become a xenogeniac, he still had a chance to claim it. The flower god leader looked worried as he led the way forward. Not long later, he saw the city ahead of them had already been taken over by plant xenogeniacs. The flower vines looked like serpentine dragons, and the flowers looked like giant butterflies. The giant flower trees had many women on them. Their lower bodies were like slithering snakes. This area was like heaven for monsters. There were so many weird plant xenogeniacs gathered there, and they were very scary. On a vine tower that had a xenogeniac atop it, there was a child clad in a red robe. Its eyes were wide open as it checked out Han Sen and the others approaching. When the flower god leader saw the red-robed child, his face turned pale. He said, "That is it. That is what the flower seed has become. Its presence is just like the seed but stronger." Ah. Han Sen wanted to ask something, but the red-robed child stood atop the tower pointing at Han Sen like a madman. No one was able to discern what its meaning was, but they saw a xenogeniac with many butterfly flowers on it approaching. The trees began to move. Millions of butterfly flowers turned into real butterflies, and they all came at them like the rush of a tide. "Oh no! Everyone, go back!" Lone Bamboo shouted. "This deified butterfly tree's radius is far too wide. I am afraid this is not something you and I can go against." "It is fine." Han Sen's heart jumped as he cast his Dongxian area. He was able to control the cogwheels of the entire universe in that portion of space. As he cast it, he saw all the butterflies in the sky appear to freeze. They were like stars that could not move. "You guys wait for me here. I am going to go check out that red-robed kid." After speaking, Han Sen went in the direction of the vine tower. The butterfly tree did not do anything, and the red-robed kid kept making noises. Han Sen saw the plant xenogeneics around the vine tower start shining with a godlight. All kinds of power were coming toward him. Han Sen did not care for them. He kept going toward the red-robed child. Skyvine radish had only just exploded. All of its genes had scattered across the space garden, and it had made the plant xenogeneics mutate. The time was too short, and the plant xenogeneics were still mutating. They needed time to digest the Skyvine radish's genes. Therefore, their levels were not yet too high. The xenogeneics that had become deified were only just primitive. Han Sen used his Dongxian area at the maximum level. He used it to stay the assault of every hostile power. The many scary plant xenogeneics that got close to him lost their power. Everyone saw Han Sen walk past the scary plant xenogeneics. Wherever he went, the plant xenogeneics fell back. Their scary powers were reduced. Han Sen walked past many scary plants all the way to the vine tower. "This person? Who is this person?" The flower god leader was in shock. No one was able to believe Han Sen was merely Xie Qingqing's bodyguard. A primitive deified had used his power to suppress many scary xenogeneics alone. That sort of power was something not even the extreme king or very high could muster. No high races produced individuals that intimidating. "It does not matter who he is. All you need to know is that he is on our side," Xie Qingqing said. His eyes were burning. Han Sen's power made him want to become deified too. The red-robed kid saw Han Sen approaching, and that the scary plant xenogeneics were absolutely useless before him. He got annoyed and stared at Han Sen. His body produced a strange red light. Han Sen did not know who the red-robed child was. He saw his body flash with a red light. It was flickering like a police car's siren. He did not walk forward. He just stopped and looked at him. He wanted to see what sort of power the child wielded. It was wild to be able to control the powers of a plant xenogeneic, but the space garden was not populated by high-level xenogeneic plants yet. The primitive deifieds had all been summoned there. After looking at Han Sen, the red-robed child suddenly developed a strange smile. Han Sen then saw the plant xenogeneics all around gather power. They were not going for Han Senator, they were going for the red-robed child. There was a sword tree full of old swords. It was becoming a scary sword light. It created a rain of swords that stormed down on the red-robed child. The witch-like flower vines were lashing out on the red-robed child too. All kinds of scary powers were mustered, and they were coming out from the sky and ground. They did not cut the red-robed child any slack. What is going on here? The plant xenogeneics are attacking him. Han Sen was not the only one confused by this. Xie Qingqing and the others were too. It was difficult to understand what was going on and why the plant xenogeneics were suddenly attacking the child. Han Sen frowned and looked at the red-robed child. The red-robed child looked back at Han Senator. He had a weird smile on his face. He did not look as if he was going to come under fire by a massive amount of plant xenogeneics. Seeing the scary power descend on the red-robed child, the sword lights were going to strike his skin. It was at that moment the red-robed child's body exploded with a red light. It was like a hole full of bugs. In the next moment, something weird happened. Han Sen felt some power come down on him. He did not have time to react. His body suddenly teleported. He appeared right where the red-robed child was a second ago, and the red-robed child appeared where Han Sen had been a moment before. It was like they had just swapped space. It was fine to swap space, but the scary power was surrounding Han Senator. The power was already able to land on his body. It disabled him from being able to use Dongxian area in time. Boom! A countless number of scary powers struck Han Sen, creating a terrible explosion. Half of the entire flower city was reduced to rubble and ruin. The colorful explosion was like a colorful sun rising. Oh no! The faces of the flower god leader and the others changed. None would have thought that the red-robed child had a power like that. It could swap places with the enemy at will. Han Sen did not have time to run. Being hit by so many scary powers like that, it was likely a transmutation deified was going to be rendered nothing but a crippled person. Do not worry. That guy wouldn't let himself be taken out that easily. Xie Qingqing was not worried in the least. The red-robed child had a very smug grin. When the explosions started to disperse, the smile on the red-robed child's face froze stiffly and queerly. Han Sen was able to walk out from that explosion with armor that was as clean and new as ever. It was burning with a white phoenix flame. He did not look like he was injured at all. "You are very weak," Han Sen said as he squinted his eyes at the red-robed child. Before the red-robed child responded, Han Sen's body flashed like a bolt of lightning. He teleported in front of the red-robed child, grabbed him by the collar, and picked him up. The red-robed child started to scream and flail his limbs in a futile bid for escape. The red light on his body exploded again. The red-robed child suddenly swapped locations so that he was the one holding Han Sen. The red-robed child looked very cocky again. He applied strength with his hands. He was planning on throwing Han Sen at the plant xenogeneics. Before he had a chance, Han Sen grabbed him by the hands and threw the kid down. He then smacked him on the butt. Whoa! The red-robed child had been slapped. It gave the child teary eyes. He was crying, and his red light was going to explode again. This time, the red light merely flashed. The Dongxian area had already stopped the universal cogwheels that were responsible for the switching. The red light that came out of the red-robed child's body froze where it was. Suddenly, it just vanished. After 2 switches, Han Sen was able to see through how the red-robed child was able to fight. His power was far weaker compared to Han Senator with the control of the Dongxian area. All his weird powers were useless now. Spank! 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 Han Sen waved his hand and slapped the red-robed child's bum a few times. The red-robed child was crying. The red-robed child only had the power to control the plant xenogeneics and swap locations. His battle power was weak, and he was unable to fight back. Han Sen was not cruel in case the red-robed child ended up being the flower seed. He might have perhaps needed him to control the space garden. He did not know what might happen if he was killed. Plus, Han Sen was curious about the red-robed child's power. He thought the red-robed child's power had to be space element, and that is how he could trade places with him. The second time the red-robed child used that power, Han Sen stopped the space universal cogwheels around from running. Yet, the red-robed child was still able to swap places with him. Therefore, it was not solely space powers in his employ. Although Han Sen saw what universal cogwheels the red-robed child used, he did not know what element those universal cogwheels were adhering to. Therefore, he did not know what the red-robed child's power was. "If you be a good boy and listen, I will let you go." Han Sen stopped his butt-cheek assault and picked up the red-robed child. His face was full of tears as he looked at him. The red-robed child heard what Han Sen had told him. He felt terrible, but he nodded. It was like he was scared. Han Sen thought the eyes of the red-robed child looked a bit evil, but he did not care. He loosened his grip on the red-robed child and let him go. The red-robed child was free again. The red light on his body flashed. Instantly, what was in front of Han Sen changed. The red-robed child turned into Xie Qingqing, but he was not standing where Xie Qingqing had been before. The red-robed child stuck out his tongue at Han Senator. He wanted to escape, but he was quickly grabbed by Lone Bamboo. The red-robed child's face exploded with red light again. Lone Bamboo ended up grabbing Flower God Leader. The red-robed child was where the Flower God Leader was. His power was extremely tricky. Although his battle power seemed weak, people did not dare attack the red-robed child because they were afraid of hitting their allies the next second. As the people kept changing, no one knew what to do. The red-robed child had already managed to escape, and he was far away. He made another mocking face toward Han Sen, turned around, and went toward the sea of flower vines. The moment he turned around, he saw a shadow in front of him. The red-robed child hit it. He ended up bouncing back. It was then that he noticed it was Han Sen. "Do you want to leave?" Han Sen squinted his eyes and looked down on the red-robed child. It gave the red-robed child a chill. The red light flashed on his body. He sought to escape via someone else. This time, it was a futile effort. Han Sen's big hands picked the child up and extinguished the boy's red light. It was like he was bringing back a mischievous puppy. The red-robed child kept flailing his limbs, but he could not escape no matter how much he tried. If you listen to what I say, perhaps you won't suffer much. Otherwise, you will end up like this thing. Han Sen waved his hand and cut the xenogenic plant next to them in half. The red-robed child quietened down. He nibbled his lips and stopped screaming and struggling, but his eyes were still red with tears. He was looking at Han Sen as if he had just been bullied. "Get those xenogenic plants out of the way," Han Sen commanded the red-robed child. The red-robed child did not speak or move. Han Sen raised his hand to pretend he was going to hit the boy and shouted, "Yeah!" He saw the xenogenic plants simply part to pave a way. Even the deified xenogenic plants were doing it. Han Sen thought, the power to control these plant xenogenics is weird. I wonder if he can control plant xenogenics of an even higher level. If he can, that would surely be awesome. He then addressed the flower god leader and said, "Leader, can you please take a look if the flower seed is still there?" The flower god leader quickly ran to the vine tower that held the flower seed. Everyone followed him. The vine tower was a mess inside, but there was no flower seed. While looking directly at the red-robed child, the flower god leader said, "It is gone. I would wager that he is the flower seed. His body bears the presence of that flower seed." Han Sen nodded and looked at the red-robed child. He was thinking about how best to deal with the child. First and foremost, it all depended on whether or not he could control the space garden. Although the red-robed child did not like this, his power had been restricted by Han Senator. He was not able to defeat him or escape. He now had to listen to Han Sen's commands. Han Sen let the red-robed child find all the flower gods there. With the red-robed child present, all the plant xenogenics in the space garden listened to him. It was easy for them to gather the rest of the flower god people. Han Sen used his phoenix flame to clear away the vegetation that had claimed their heads to bring them back to normal. Upon seeing what Han Sen had done, and with the red-robed child adhering to what Han Sen told him to do, the flower god people did not dare break their promise or raise qualms with the new sheriff. They had to stay, listen, and do whatever Han Sen and Xie Qing King ordered them to do. They had become a subordinate race. There was no doubt about that. Han Sen rounded up the displaced deified elites and commanded the red-robed child to open the space garden's door to send them away. Farewell. Before Long Bamboo left, he smiled at Han Senator. It seemed as if he knew who Sanmu really was, but simply did not want to expose him. When all the deified elites departed, Han Sen did not worry too much about others learning about the space garden. Even if they knew about it, the knowledge was pointless to them. The space garden was a scary xenogenic Ganoderma lucidum. Even true god elites were not able to overcome the power of the Ganoderma lucidum. As long as Han Sen kept a tight leash on the red-robed child, no one else would be able to enter the space garden. From now on, we have a territory to call our own. Now, all we need to do is light up a lantern. Xie Qing King and Han Sen were relaxing in the garden. They were having a barbecue and drinking beer. The red-robed child was sitting next to Han Senator. He was holding some grilled meat, and he really enjoyed it. Breaking the door and lighting a lantern would not be difficult, but we need to think about which lantern we should replace, Han Sen said. Do we need to think about it? Xie Qing King asked. The flower gods and tree men already have a grudge. We can use the name of the flower gods to get rid of the tree men. Han Sen shook his head and said, by doing that, we will be helping the flower gods light up the lantern. It would have nothing to do with humans and spirits. We will have to light up our own lantern. We cannot use the name of some other race. Does it really matter? Xie Qing King asked with a laugh. From what I can tell, there is a problem with the human name. Many scary people in this universe are in search of humans. If I use that name to light up the lantern, it will probably attract many disasters and bring danger to the space garden. After pausing, Han Sen said, there is no rush. I have another plan. We should use this time to get our people to the space garden. I need to watch this little guy in case he tries to stir up some mischief. I suppose you will have to do the people ferrying service. Xie Qing King agreed and said, that will be easy. I will go to Sky Palace and pick up Bauer and the others. As for the other guys, I will just have to let them know.
Han Sen nodded.
He really missed Bauer, Zero, Little Angel, and Han Yin. Previously, he did not have a territory of his own, but now he did. He was going to bring them there. Han Sen was worried about one thing. The Skyvine Radish's gene power was too strong. After it had been absorbed by the Space Garden, the Space Garden was continuously evolving. Many plant xenogeneics and the flower fields leveled up to become humongous. And they did so quickly. There were many deified xenogeneics around. Han Sen thought, if things keep going like this, there will be transmutation or even larvae-class deified xenogeneics running about. If he was not able to claim the red-robed child to keep everything under control, he was sure to end up in trouble. Unfortunately, that red-robed child did not accept anything. He was listening to Han Sen's commands for now, but Han Sen sensed that as soon as he had the chance he would revolt. Han Sen thought, it looks like I will have to wait until Bauer gets here. I can't wait to see what Bauer will do to this little guy. If Bauer is unable to tame him, we'll have no choice but to lock him up. After the flower gods lost the flowers on their heads, their levels had significantly dropped. Now, even a king-class flower god was rare to find. Luckily, they only had to make genofluid, and that never cost them much power. Because the Space Garden had mutated, many of the xenogeneic plants had leveled up. They used their old formulas to make genofluids because the ingredients were now better. That meant the effect the fluids had on genoarts was able to increase. That greatly surprised them. With the talent the flower gods had for synthesizing genofluids, they could reproduce the genes of the xenogeneics. One genofluid was able to concentrate a few or even a dozen xenogeneic genes. After humans used them, their genes increased quickly. They did not have to waste time by digesting flesh. Technology really does make things much easier, Han Sen said. If I knew there was a skill like this, I would never have had to practice a digesting genoart. But Han Sen's deified genes had already reached 100. He did not need to drink genofluid anymore. Which battle body should I increase first? Han Sen was in his room. He was thinking about which genoart he should evolve first. By having 100 deified genes, it made one's battle body evolve. Han Sen did not hesitate much. He leveled up The Story of Genes. The Story of Genes was the hardest to evolve. Therefore, Han Sen chose it. Now that he had the Space Garden, it was easy to collect more deified genes. He did not have to worry too much. When Han Sen decided to evolve, he realized things were going to be different from what he believed it would be like. This evolution process was not something separate. The moment Han Sen decided to evolve, his body became a xenogeneic by its own volition. His 4 genoarts started to run, and it prompted the changes. Han Sen felt as if his body was brimming with a strange sort of power. It was like he was peeling off his skin. His gene database kept refreshing by purging old genes and replacing them with new ones that carried a different message. His body had changes that flipped the ground and the sky. Black air was emitted out of his body. It formed a giant cocoon that wholly encased him. Han Sen felt rather happy. It was fortunate he had locked up the red-robed child inside Destiny's Tower. He was unable to move now, so it was lucky that he had not given the child a chance to run amok while he was busy. Han Sen thought his evolution process would be over soon, but his body kept on changing. He was like that for an entire month. Still, he had not finished evolving. Because his body was always changing, he could not pause for a timeout. He had to continue without a break. He had to be patient and wait for it all to be over. He waited a long time. He eventually passed the 2-month mark. It was on day 70 that he felt as if his body had stopped changing. The gene database stopped renewing. Nothing was being released from his body anymore. Katcha, the black ball, which was like a cocoon, was broken. Han Sen walked out of it. Padong. Han Sen stepped onto thin air, which resulted in him falling to the ground. His face almost got crushed. He clutched his face painfully while his eyes dropped tears. Where is my power? Han Sen was shocked. He no longer felt any power in his body. It was like he was just a commoner that had never bothered to practice. He would not have fallen over and felt pain if he had his power. Han Sen quickly examined his body. What he saw made him freeze where he was. He had a small shoulder and small legs. They looked white and cute. Han Sen was shocked. He looked like a child that was only 6 years old. He looked just like the red-robed child. He was inside his body now. Han Sen ran toward a mirror and looked. He saw that he was now indeed a 5 to 6-year-old boy. Yet, he remembered that when he was that age, he did not look like his current appearance. The little boy in the mirror had black eyes and black hair. His face looked as pale as a crystal. His facial structure was very beautiful. He looked rather feminine. Han Sen now knew why he was like this. When he combined with spell, he was likely bound to look a bit more feminine. Han Sen wanted to cancel his combination, but it was no longer working. He felt no power in his body. It really was like he had the body of an average child. How could I end up like this? Did something happen while I was leveling up? Han Sen's head flooded with a barrage of questions. He quickly went to check his status. Fortunately, although his power had gone, his sea of soul and beast souls were still accessible. Han Sen then saw his status. Han Sen, Super God Spirit Body, Gene Battle Body, Xenogenic, Transmutation Class. Level, Deified. Evolution Level, 0 out of 100. Lifespan, 2658. That is all correct. I leveled up to Transmutation Class, but why is my body like this? And why am I unable to use my power? Han Sen's heart flashed with many questions, but he could not find the answers. On a plain full of yellow sand, a man was stepping across the yellow sand. He was walking. The sand, which was over the sky, did not touch his clothes. There was a valley not far through the desert. The man saw the valley. He squinted his eyes and walked toward it. Pang! When the man had almost reached the valley, a bullet shot the ground near his feet. It touched his shoes and hit the sand. This is not a place for people to travel. The valley boomed with a very loud voice. Are you holy pirate of the pirates? My name is Baiwanjia. I would like to conduct business with Mr. Holy Pirate. Baiwanjia no longer walked forward. He stopped and tried to discuss it with the valley. The Extreme King Prince Baiwanjia? The voice came from the valley again. It was obviously confused by the traveler's announcement. Yes, that is me, Baiwanjia answered. Humph. Is your old man Bai King here? If he is, he can talk to me. You are just a pompous junior who does not have what it takes to talk to me. The voice sounded cold again. I have heard Mr. Holy Pirate loves to research drawings. There is a sky silk picture that belongs to my race. I was wondering if you were interested in it, Mr. Holy Pirate. Baiwanjia pulled out a scroll that contained the drawing. Is it the sky silk picture that belonged to Shadow King? While he was talking, the shadow of an old man appeared in front of Baiwanjia. He stared at the painting in his hands. Yes, it belonged to Shadow King, our ancestor, Baiwanjia said to him with a smile. It is Shadow King's sky silk picture. It was drawn by him. I wonder if Mr. Holy Pirate is interested in obtaining it. What do you want? The old man looked at Baiwanjia. I would like Mr. Holy Pirate to steal one thing for me, Baiwanjia said in a serious tone. Regardless of your success or failure, I will give you this sky silk picture. Is there a place the Extreme King cannot access? The old man asked while squinting his eyes. There is no way you are asking me to go to outer sky to steal something. Baiwanjia shook his head. I would like Mr. Holy Pirate to go and steal something from the Space Garden. Space Garden? Indeed, that is an annoying place. Aside from me, the Holy Pirate, no one else can force their way in. The old man nodded and asked, What do you want me to steal for you? You should know that there are 3 rules we bind ourselves to. Of course, I know about Mr. Holy Pirate's pirate code, Baiwanjia said with a smile. What I want Mr. Holy Pirate to steal is a 5 to 6-year-old kid. He is just a kid, but he is actually a xenogeniac. Stealing xenogeniacs should not go against Mr. Holy Pirate's 3 sacred rules. An hour later, Baiwanjia left the valley with a smile. The sky silk picture was no longer in his possession. That Holy Pirate agreed to help me. This is surely a done deal. If I can steal that child, the Space Garden will belong to me. Baiwanjia's smile grew deeper and deeper. Although Baiwanjia did not see Han Sen claim the red-robed child, he saw Han Sen take the red-robed child to save the flower gods. He was able to guess that the red-robed child was doing something special, but the Space Garden was already in Han Sen's hands. It was too hard for outsiders to infiltrate, and Bai Wanjie wanted to take the space garden all for himself. He did not say this to the superiors of the Extreme King, so he eventually thought of the Holy Pirate of the Pirates. The pirates had been in the universe for many years. Only one person was able to possess the title of Holy Pirate. The reason why only he had become so famous was that he was the only one who was able to sneak into outer sky and steal something. He made it out alive. Everyone thought he was the best pirate, so he earned the reputation of being able to steal anything and everything. Ha! Ha! Little Han Sen, you look so much better than how you used to be, Xie King said while patting Han Sen on the head. Go to hell. You go to the flower god leader and see if they have finished the geno fluid that was made by the queen flower. I need it now. Han Sen pushed Xie King's hand away. He was terribly upset by what had become of him. Xie King was very happy. He patted Han Sen's head and said, You just wait here, little son. Senator Big Brother Xie will help you. Do not tell me about my body's problems, Han Sen said. He did not want this to cause any more trouble. Xie King agreed and went to the flower god leader. He brought the geno fluid formulated by the queen flower. It was only a big, hand-sized bottle. It had purple fluid inside it. Han Sen opened the bottle and had a sip. He soon heard an announcement. Deified gene +1. Deified gene +1. Han Sen drank it and earned 2 deified genes. There was still a lot left inside the bottle. That is the right way for a person to increase their deified genes. I used to keep eating meat that ravaged my bowels for a measly increase in gene points.
Han Sen sighed.
He thought, if I can increase my deified genes with this, that means my body is okay. It is leveling up normally, but why do I look like this? And why can I not use my powers? Han Sen was a bit depressed. He drank all of the geno fluid. It increased his tally of deified genes by 7, but Han Sen's body did not recover because of it. He was still unable to feel the power inside him. If I can't keep recovering, I will have to collect 100 deified genes and see if I can become larvae class. Maybe, just maybe, I might be able to recover. Han Sen tried to comfort himself. He had now encountered a very troublesome thing. Han Sen used to be able to control the red-robed child. He was able to take the red-robed child with him to kill the plant xenogeneics without any resistance. Now, Han Sen was unable to use his powers. He did not dare consult the red-robed child anymore. It would have been way too difficult for him to kill the deified plant xenogeneics as well. The flower gods did not have deified elites in their midst, and Xie King was only king class. No one there had the ability to take out a deified xenogeneic. I have to wait for Bauer and the little red bird to get here to hunt deified xenogeneics. Han Sen tried to quell his impatience to endure the awful time. After Xie King left the space garden to pick up Bauer, Han Sen practiced his geno arts there to see if he could somehow trigger something that would return him to how he used to be. Because his body was not injured, even if he used his super god spirit body, he still looked like a child. He was unable to become normal again. One day, Han Sen was in his garden practicing his geno arts. Unfortunately, no progress on returning to his old self had been made. While he was feeling depressed, someone pushed the gate and entered his garden. Xie King is back that soon? Han Sen was shocked. Aside from Xie King, the flower god people did not randomly choose to enter his private garden. With Han Sen's guess, he also knew Xie King should not have returned so soon. After a closer inspection, he noticed the entrant was not Xie King. He was an old man clad in black clothing. His hair and beard were gray. Honestly, he looked a bit disgusting. Han Sen's heart felt a sudden chill. He did not recall seeing someone like that inside the space garden before. If the old man was not from the flower god, he questioned how he was able to gain access to the space garden in the first place. The old man pushed the gate open and saw Han Senator. His eyes looked at Han Sen like the eyes of a dead fish. He mumbled, "It is a xenogeneic that is 6 years old, but he is not wearing red clothes. He is not bald, either. Is this the one?" Han Sen heard him and was shocked. The things the old man was describing had to be about the red-robed child. This old man has come for the red-robed child, but how did he gain access to the space garden? Han Sen thought. He was in a hurry now too. With his body's condition being what it was, he could not use power or negotiate with the man. The old man ignored Han Sen. His eyes had two god lights in them. He scanned the area around and spoke to himself. The whole of the flower city only has one xenogenic that looks like this. Clothes can change and hair can grow. This most likely is the one I am looking for. When Han Sen heard that, he developed black lines across his head. That old man was making the mistake of believing he was the red-robed child. Han Sen wanted to explain he was not the red-robed child, but the old man waved his hand to cast a weird power. Han Sen ended up flying into his sleeves. Very powerful skill. Han Sen could see that inside the sleeves was just darkness. He had no idea where he was. It was like its own independent realm. How unlucky. Why at this time must a creepy old man be coming for me? Han Sen was depressed. He was trapped in that dark place and could not leave. There was nothing he could do. After the weird old man kidnapped Han Sen, he departed Space Garden. There were many plant xenogenics in Space Garden, but Holy Pirate did not think those low-level plant xenogenics were important. He just nabbed Han Sen and made a hasty escape. The powerful Space Garden was not able to stop the man from leaving. The two kept traveling through space. In a few days, that weird old man was back to where he lived. Right, Bai Wanjia wanted him alive. I can't kill him. The weird old man had thought about Han Sen trapped inside his treasure sleeve for a few days now. Not wanting him to die, he waved his sleeves to let Han Sen out. The weird old man was the holy pirate who Bai Wanjia hired. He was going to steal the red-robed child, but had accidentally kidnapped Han Sen by mistake. Han Sen had been trapped in the treasury sleeve for a while now. It was all black in there. He did not know where he was, or what time it was until the old man let him out. He was thrown out onto his backside. The first thing he saw was the weird old man. He quickly looked around. He was in a valley with lots of weird flowers and grass. There was also a blue, babbling stream. Many animals were hanging around there. You should eat this. The strange old man collected 2 pieces of fruit off a tree and tossed them to Han Sen. He accepted the fruit and stared at the old man with a complex look. He did not know if he should explain matters or not. After all, he did not know what the old man wanted from the red-robed child. If he said he was not the right person and the old man thought he was useless, he could end up killing him. That would have been a poor result. Han Sen wasn't going to explain. Instead, he asked, "Why did you bring me here?" "I captured you for treasure." Holy Pirate was in a good mood. He brought out the sky silk picture. He stared at it like he was drunk. "What treasure did you want?" Han Sen asked. "This is the treasure," Holy Pirate said as he looked at the picture. Han Sen looked at what he was referring to. He noticed it was a painting. In the picture, there was a fairy with her clothes floating. She was flying to Cloud 9. "I have many more pictures of pretty women. If you let me go, I'll give you 10. Actually, no, I will give you 100. Upon realizing he was only worth a picture, Han Sen felt depressed. "You know nothing. This is the sky silk picture that was drawn by the Extreme King Shadow King. This picture is of the love of Shadow King's life, but it is a shame that he could not get her." Shadow King saw his lover fly to the sky and break the door. She entered the Geno Hall, which meant he knew he would never see her again. In his profound sadness, he decided to draw this sky silk picture. After pausing, Holy Pirate said, "This picture shows how much Shadow King misses her. This is not like an ordinary picture. You can never find a picture that evokes as much emotion as this. What a good picture." Holy Pirate did not look at Han Sen as he spoke. He kept inspecting the silk picture and admiring it. "Did the people of the Extreme King use this picture to exchange with my life?" Han Sen stabbed at a guess. "You just sit tight here, and I will leave you alone. If you do not be honest with me, I will lock you up." Holy Pirate did not look at Han Sen. He thought he was so good that Han Sen could never escape him. "Who are you?" Han Sen asked. "Have you ever heard of Holy Pirate of the Pirates?" Holy Pirate had a look of pride as he spoke. "I have heard of the pirates, but I have never heard of Holy Pirate before." Han Sen was not trying to make him mad. He had truly never heard of the man. After all, Han Sen did not know much about the universe. For someone like Holy Pirate, if someone had not mentioned him, he would not have known. "It does not matter if you don't know. Just sit and wait here." Holy Pirate said that, and then ignored Han Senator. He kept admiring the sky silk picture. Han Sen tried asking the man a few questions, but Holy Pirate totally ignored him. He was captivated by the silk picture. Han Sen leaned his head over to get a closer look. He noticed that above Cloud 9, there was a temple that looked like a palace. It looked like the Geno Hall he used to see. Han Sen sought to ask who the woman in the picture was. After all, she had the power to go to the Geno Hall. She had to have been a supremely powerful elite. But Holy Pirate was completely ignoring him. He was obsessed with the picture. Saliva was almost drooling out of his mouth. He had 2 bites of the fruit. It was very sweet. A warm sensation began to spread inside his body. He thought it might have been something truly special. To Han Sen's current body, fruit like that did absolutely nothing for him. This creepy old man calls himself Holy Pirate. He was able to enter the space garden freely. I am afraid his level must be quite high, but I can't use any power. I do not think I can escape this predicament. Han Sen rolled his eyes. He turned to the Holy Pirate and said, "Can I walk around the valley?" Seeing the creepy old man ignoring him, Han Sen just walked out. He wanted to figure out where he was. The valley was not a big place. Aside from a few wooden houses, there were weird flowers and strange grasses. There were animals everywhere. It was a good place to live a nice, private life. Not long later, Han Sen reached the valley's entrance. He looked out and saw something completely different. Yellow sand was everywhere. Beyond the valley was one vast desert wasteland. It was a completely different world to the bosom of that valley. Han Sen did not fancy leaving the valley, so he returned and walked deeper into the valley. When Han Sen walked to the end of the wooden houses, he saw a mountain wall. It displayed a picture. The picture looked to be one of a chess game that had been left unfinished due to a stalemate. This looks like Go, but a Go chessboard only has 19 by 19 squares. There are many more squares here on this one. Judging from the black and white chess pieces and formation, it really does look like Go. When Han Sen used to practice Heavenly Go, he did some research on Go. He was not a professional, but he could play chess pretty well. After staring at it for some time, he confirmed that its rules were just like Go. The picture displayed an unfinished match that was currently in a stalemate. Is this Holy Pirate obsessed with chess? Is that why he carved a stalemate on the wall? Is it so he can look at it every day? Han Sen examined it for a while. He deciphered that in this stalemate, the white chess pieces were actually at a greater advantage that could lead to a win. The black chess pieces, on the other hand, looked weak and destroyed. It seemed as if they were going to lose. Han Sen loved playing chess, but he did not have the mood to play it now. He kept walking further into the valley. It was not long before Han Sen discovered that every now and again, the cliffs and walls displayed a picture of a similar stalemate. When Han Sen walked into the deeper recesses of the valley, he had managed to count 17 of those stalemates. Every picture of a stalemate was different. Some of the games were at the very end, whereas others displayed games that had only just begun. Han Sen thought these games of chess were research samples of what Holy Pirate studied. By inspecting them, they did look like simple games of chess. They did not seem like worthwhile candidates for being scrawled onto the walls. Does this mean Holy Pirate actually sucks at playing chess? Is that why he put such simple chess games on the wall? Han Sen did not think that would be possible. The will of the deified elites should have been enough to make them good at Go. Even if they were not particularly talented, there was no way such a simple chess game could not be understood. There was no need to carve an example on the wall and observe them every day. Aside from those stalemates, Han Sen did not see anything else in the valley. He did not dare enter the wooden houses. The whole valley was mostly natural. There weren't many man-made trails. When Han Sen returned to the wooden house he had emerged from, Holy Pirate had already put away his silk picture. He was lying down on a chair sunbathing. He looked very happy. Why? Holy Pirate, did you put those chessboard images on the mountains? Han Sen tried to frame the question indirectly, hoping to find a way to convince Holy Pirate to start talking about them in a roundabout way. The Extreme King hated him a lot. If he was in the Extreme King's hands, Han Sen did not think he would be safe. Holy Pirate coldly grunted and said, "If I knew what those chess games meant, I would not be in this place that not even birds will come to *Tion. What does that mean? Didn't you carve those chess matches into the wall? Han Sen looked at Holy Pirate in shock. I would not have the time to do that, Holy Pirate casually said. They were carved by some old fart. He said if I was able to solve the secrets of the chess games, I could find the treasure he left. I have been studying them for a few decades and still have discovered nothing. Han Sen's heart jumped. He looked at Holy Pirate and asked, if I can help you solve the secret of the chess matches, will you let me go? Do not waste your time. I have a title in this universe, and it is Chess King. After inspecting it for a few decades and not finding anything, it must have all been a lie concocted by that old far. He realized he said something he shouldn't have, so Holy Pirate stopped talking. Han Sen thought they were just ordinary games of chess. Therefore, he did not examine them closely. After hearing him say that, he thought now might be a good opportunity. Thus, he went back to look at the chess matches. Although he might not have been able to solve the secrets of the chess matches, this was all Han Sen could do for the time being. If he discovered the secrets of the chess games, perhaps he could negotiate with the man. Han Sen checked out each image once. It was just like the first time he observed them. There was nothing special. There were just 17 different stalemates. With Han Sen's chess talent, he was unable to tell what was so special about the 17 stalemates. At the very least, he was unable to tell if any secrets had yet to be discovered. Does that mean the secret of the chessboards isn't actually in the chessboards? Han Sen tried to analyze the stalemates via a different perspective. Han Sen's Heavenly Go and Under the Sky knife skills were heavily related to chess. So, he tried to separate the black chess pieces from the white chess pieces and started to move like a chess piece. Han Sen went back to the first stalemate he saw. He thought of himself as a chess piece and started walking per the black chess pieces of the chessboard. Han Sen quickly discovered that would not work. The locations of some of the chess pieces were in reverse to where he went. Unless he had 8 pairs of legs, he would not be able to walk like that. That means these chess pieces do not represent a location to get to. Han Sen tried doing it with every picture. He noticed it did not work in many ways. Even if he walked past it, it was useless. The chessboards were not directions. Little doll, stop wasting your time. I have tried in many different ways. There is no secret. Holy Pirate approached Han's senator. He threw him a few fruits and said, you should eat more. Someone is going to pick you up tomorrow. Do not worry. No one wants to kill you. You just need to listen to someone's orders. Are the Extreme King people coming tomorrow? That means I have no time. Han Sen looked at the sky. The sun was going to set soon. It did not seem like he could accomplish much in the space of one night. But Han Sen was not going to give up. He sat on top of a wall and ate the fruit while he examined the chess pieces on one of the walls. He thought, the chessboard itself is fine. The chess pieces do not make directions. So what is the secret of these chessboards? Or, is it just how Holy Pirate said? Is it all a big joke? Is there no secret to be discovered with the chessboards? Han Sen had nothing else to do, so he continued watching the chessboards. While he was looking at them, his brain suddenly flashed. What if I played out all of these chess games? What would happen then? After Han Sen thought that, he quickly wanted to do it. He chose a chessboard that was nearing the end. He tried playing chess on his own and continued with the game. Since the stalemate was near the end, the winner was practically determined. Han Sen just continued with it. Throughout the rest of the chess match, he did not notice any problems. Han Sen used the chess pieces he had just played with to walk once. He noticed it still did not work. Han Sen did not give up. He observed the chessboard again. He noticed when the chessboard was finished, it seemed a bit different compared to when it was unfinished. What is the difference? Han Sen looked at the chessboard and thought about it. He looked at it for a while before slapping his legs and saying, could this thing be a password? Is it like how the brakes guys use their hands for a password on that metal box? You needed a set of punching skills to open the metal box. What if I follow that discipline in a chess game? What would happen then? Han Sen was examining one of the chessboards, but he swiftly discovered a problem. He did not know which way to go. This Go was not like the average game of Chinese chess. If it was Chinese chess, one could look at the chess pieces and tell what sort of steps could be taken. In Go, it was extremely hard to see which chess piece was moved first and which chess pieces moved later. So, it was hard to find out the order of the chess pieces. In that case, I have to go backward and replay the entire match of that chessboard. That way, I might be able to find something. Han Sen started to reverse the moves played out on that chessboard. It was not easy for Han Sen to do, even though he was good at Heavenly Go, Dongshin Sutra, and Under the Sky Knife. By the time he was finished with one chessboard, it was already midnight. It was only a few hours until daylight. His work did not go to waste. After Han Sen replayed the game of chess, he was able to figure out the order of each chess piece. My success hinges exclusively on this. Han Sen walked before that stalemate. He wanted to press the chess pieces on the image, but he was not tall enough. He was unable to touch them. A child's body is horrible. Han Sen had no choice. At the moment, he had no power. He could not hit things in the air. In the valley, he found a thick branch that he could use as a ladder. Han Sen returned to the chessboard with it. He climbed up the mountain with the ladder. According to the order he had calculated, he placed his hand on the first chess piece. Catcha, that chess piece that was carved onto the mountain and not being pressed inside. It made Han Sen extremely happy. According to what he thought, he then pressed the chess pieces in order. Huh? What is going on? Holy Pirate walked before the mountain. He looked up at Han Sen, pressing a chess piece in with shock. He had tried to do that before, but he had been unable to press it in. Now, he was seeing Han Sen doing what he had failed to do. That made him quite surprised. He had no clue how Han Sen had managed to do it. Han Sen pressed all the black chess pieces, but it was still quiet all around. He did not see any contraption unlock or secrets unveiled. No danger showed its face either. Han Sen's heart jumped. He started pressing the white chess pieces. It seemed like Han Sen moving his little body via that cumbersome ladder was too slow. Holy Pirate teleported forward and lifted Han Sen up. Tell me which chess piece you want me to press, and I will help you. Han Sen told him the order in which to press the pieces, and Holy Pirate went to press them. He easily pushed in the chess pieces. Soon after, all the chess pieces on the chessboard were pressed in. After they pressed all the chess pieces of the stalemate, nothing happened. Do I have to press the chess pieces on all 17 stalemate images? Han Sen asked. That won't be too hard. Holy Pirate flew over to the second stalemate. He reached his hand out to press a chess piece. When his fingers came down on it, the chess piece did not move. It did not go into the stone as the other ones did. He pressed every chess piece on the chessboard he was able to. Not one of them seemed to budge. Why is it not working? Holy Pirate looked at Han Sen. He was called the Chess King in that universe, but his chess skill level was not all that high. It was just as Han Sen thought. Holy Pirate was bad at playing chess, even though the man thought he was great at it. He was confident in his chess-playing level. If you want to know how to press these pieces correctly, promise to let me go, Han Sen said. If you make this promise, I will give you the solution. This, Holy Pirate hesitated. Although Bai Wanjia had told him success or failure mattered, he was still in possession of the Sky Silk picture. But as one of the pirates, stealing the benefits and doing nothing in return was not an option. With these revelations, Holy Pirate did not want to give Han Sen away. It was not easy to uncover the secrets of the chessboards. If Han Sen left, he would not be able to continue. Can it uncover the secrets of the chessboard? This Senegeniac is a bit weird. Holy Pirate looked at Han Sen strangely. How about I tell you the secret of the chessboards, and you let me go, Han Sen said. Just pretend you have never seen me before. Holy Pirate had to shake his head. Even thieves have a moral code. I accepted a job and received the Sky Silk picture. I cannot go back on my word and break my promise. Han Sen felt depressed and replied, You are just a thief. Don't talk to me about having morals. Does your brain have a problem? Holy Pirate preferred to not go back on his word about handing Han Sen over learning the secret of the chessboards. That really depressed Han Sen. Han Sen suddenly thought of something. He said, If you think things are really that way, then you don't have to let me go. I will use the chessboard's secret to barter with you. What kind of trade are you thinking about? Holy Pirate did not want to give up learning the secrets of the chessboards. He looked at Han Sen with interest. I will hire you to kidnap me again, Han Sen said. He sounded like he was rapping hip-hop. Still, Holy Pirate understood what Han Sen meant. What you mean to say is that you want me to kidnap you back from the Extreme King once you've been handed over, right? That is absolutely right, Han Sen said with a nod. That is not something easily done, Holy Pirate quietly said. You can easily go around the Space Garden, Han Sen said. Is it really that hard to penetrate the Extreme King? In this universe, no one can enter the Space Garden freely except for me, Holy Pirate said. Entering the Extreme King is easier than going to the Space Garden, but the Extreme Kings have many elites in their ranks. And there is, of course, that horny old man, by King. That guy is a true God-class guy. Stealing you under their all-seeing eyes without bringing attention to myself would be incredibly difficult. If I am exposed and they learned I stole you, I am afraid I would have to keep running for the rest of my life. Ugh, it doesn't work for you no matter what I suggest. Han Sen smiled and said, I don't think you should call yourself Holy Pirate. Instead, you should call yourself the Crybaby Pirate. Holy Pirate was not angry. He went silent for a little while before saying, That is fine. I might need to take a risk, but it is worth it for the secret of the chessboards. Tell me, what is the secret of the chessboards? We will trade when you've done your part. Once you have rescued me from the Extreme King, I will tell you what you need to know. Han Sen was not going to divulge the secrets of the chessboards to Holy Pirate just yet. I would never betray a promise I made. Everyone in this universe knows I keep my word. Holy Pirate stroked his beard and looked at Han Senator. He looked angry. You are a thief that kidnaps children, so why would I believe you? Han Sen asked. Holy Pirate was speechless. His three-rule pirate code consisted of the fact he would never steal a child, but he did not consider xenogenics as counting. After all, hunting xenogenics or eating xenogenics was perfectly normal in the universe. Holy Pirate would never have believed this xenogenic could be so smart and possess the personality it did. It is the same as when I go and save you, Holy Pirate coldly said. Who left the pictures of the 17 stalemates on the walls? Han Sen changed the subject and pointed at the chessboard scrawled into the walls. An old fart monster. Holy Pirate seemed to be in a bad mood. He did not answer Han Sen's question. He went back to his rocking chair and fell asleep. Han Sen examined the stalemates alone. After researching them for a while, he was unable to open the password of the chests. Thus, he had to remember them. The next morning, someone was outside the valley calling out for Holy Pirate. When Han Sen heard the voice, he immediately knew it was by Wanjia. It really is him, Han Sen coldly grunted. What an annoying man. Don't let me see you again. Holy Pirate picked up Han Sen and teleported away from the valley. He threw him to Bai Wanjia and said, That is what you wanted. This transaction is complete. Bai Wanjia picked up Han Sen with confusion and asked, Why does he have black hair and black eyes? I wanted a bald guy in red robes. He could have changed clothes and grew hair, Holy Pirate replied. Besides, there was only one xenogeniac in the Space Garden that met the defined criteria. If you can find another one that looks like this, you can have my head on a plate. Of course, I believe you, Holy Pirate. Bai Wanjia checked out Han Sen. Back then, he had only seen Han Sen bring the red-robed child to save the flower gods. He did not see any further details. Aside from Han Sen's clothes and hair, he did look like the red-robed child. And it was a xenogenic body. Bai Wanjia was unable to tell that it was Han Sen and not the red-robed child he was after. Bai Wanjia looked at Han Sen as he asked, Are you the red-robed child from the Space Garden? Han Sen looked at him coldly and did not speak. Bai Wanjia frowned. He was going to do something, but Holy Pirate coldly said, You guys may go now. Thanks, Holy Pirate. I am going to leave. Bai Wanjia did not want to offend Holy Pirate. He was suspicious, but he still left with Han Sen. After they departed the planet, Bai Wanjia returned to his battleship and locked Han Sen inside a supergravity cabin. Bai Wanjia looked at the monitor for a while, but he was still unable to confirm if Han Sen was or was not the red-robed child he had seen that day. It looks like I have to return to King's Kingdom and try to read his memories to confirm his identity. Bai Wanjia did not bother interrogating Han Senator. That was unnecessary for him to do. There were many professionals in the Extreme King that could do that for him. Han Sen was worried Bai Wanjia would opt to torture him. If that happened, he was going to suffer a lot. After Bai Wanjia locked him in the supergravity cabin, he did not come back. I wonder when Holy Pirate will come to save me. Han Sen did not place all of his faith in Holy Pirate. If Holy Pirate was scared of the Extreme King, then he would be waiting for nothing. If my body was ordinary, I could escape this mere supergravity cabin. It could not contain me. Han Sen felt depressed. His body's power was currently unavailable. He was unable to make use of anything. Fortunately, I can still use beast souls. It is not like there are any other ways. Han Sen was still wondering if there was a way for him to escape. Before Han Sen had the chance, they were already in King's Kingdom. This was Han Sen's second time with the Extreme King, and he was filled with a bevy of emotions. He expected he would come back to the Extreme King again, but he thought he would only have done so as some sort of king. He would have dominated the Extreme King and kept them below his thumb. No one expected he would be returning to the Extreme King as a prisoner. The skies were familiar there, and Han Sen could not help but sigh. I cannot believe this. This is a bad stroke of luck. I am the red-robed child scapegoat, and I have been captured and brought to his Extreme King hellhole. Furthermore, I have no power. After returning to his planet, Bai Wanjie told his servant, "Go and fetch Mr. Yin." Out of the top 3 in the universe, the Extreme King was the race with the most outsiders. They had also raised many deified outsiders for themselves. Most of those outsider deifieds were loyal, and they only worked for the Extreme King. They rarely returned to their own races. Mr. Yin was one of the outsider deifieds the Extreme King had raised. It was a ghost head elite that had been raised by Bai Wanjie and his faction. He worked for Bai Wanjie. Ghost heads were good at reading people's brains. When it came to the transmutation class, Mr. Yin was exceptional. Since he was able to extract the memories of a brain going all the way back to a victim's birth, he only required enough time to bring results. He was also able to alter the memories of a person to control them. Ghost heads were able to turn enemies into friends. It was not difficult for Mr. Yin to do that. Reading shallow memories was something they could do whenever. When it came to reading the deeper memories, they needed to control the person first. It was even harder to change their memories. Han Sen had been locked up inside a supergravity cabin this entire time. When the cabin door opened, he saw Bai Wanjie enter. He was with a guy that looked like a big demon King Piccolo. Han Sen checked the green-skinned person out. He also saw the 2 antennas on his head. He knew Bai Wanjie would not have invited this person in if it wasn't for some specific reason. "Mr. Yin, thank you for doing this," Bai Wanjie said to the green-skinned creep. Mr. Yin smiled and said, "You are welcome, Mr. Crown Prince. After all, this is my job." After that, Mr. Yin walked in front of Han's senator. Since Han Sen had been locked down by the supergravity pressure, he was unable to resist and move his body. He was only able to watch Mr. Yin walk in front of him. Mr. Yin's green eyes peered into Han Sen's. His lips were lifted. He had a weird smile on his face as he said, "Do not be afraid, little child. This will all be over very soon." After that, the green antennas on his head flashed with a green light. In the next second, the green light shot into Han Sen's skull via the space between his eyebrows. Boom! The green light quickly invaded Han Sen's brain. It enabled Han Sen to understand what it was it had come there to do to him. "He wants to read my memories." Han Sen laughed coldly in his heart. He was not afraid of anyone trying to torture him, but by trying to read his memories, it was like a death wish for the invader. Even if he was unable to resist the man, the black crystal armor would not allow the invader to succeed. Even if the black crystal armor did not care about him, it would not allow anyone to scan Han Sen's memories. That would just expose the black armor. After the green light entered Han Sen's brain, the black crystal armor did not react. This confused Han Sen, but he soon saw Mr. Yin's face start to change. His eyes were wide open. His green skin began to expand and turn black. Pang! Mr. Yin screamed and flew backward, hitting the cabin's wall. He coughed up some blood. "Mr. Yin." Bai Wanjie frowned as he picked up Mr. Yin from the floor. Mr. Yin wiped the blood off his mouth and stared at Han Sen with immense shock. He said, "This xenogeneic is weird. His head is like a rock. There is not a single message leaking out of it. Even my ghost brain power cannot invade his thoughts. Mr. Crown Prince, is he a deified xenogeneic that is above larvae class? I do not know what level this xenogeneic is." Bai Wanjie frowned and asked, "Do you think there is a way to read his memories? Right now, we can only use our race's secret Geno Art Ghost Headfall," Mr. Een hesitantly said. "After using this Geno Art, even if a Xenogeneic is larvae class, we can still read their memories. But by using this Geno Art, it will end up damaging the target's brain a bit." "What? How much will the target be damaged?" Bai Wanjie asked. "If we control it correctly, they will only lose a few of their memories," Mr. Een said. "If things don't go smoothly, and we have to force ourselves in, there can be even more damage. He might end up becoming a simpleton." Bai Wanjie thought deeply before asking, "If he becomes a simpleton, do you think we can still control his body?" "That would not be too difficult," Mr. Een said. "We just need to write down the memories and make him do whatever you want. But he will never be able to think by himself again." "That is fine," Bai Wanjie said with a careless wave of his hand. With Bai Wanjie's permission, Mr. Een did not have to worry about anything. His antenna again flashed with a green bolt of lightning. This time, the green lightning did not strike Han Senator, it was going into the antenna. It made Mr. Yin's whole body crackle and fizz with green lightning. This lasted about 7 to 8 minutes. After that, Mr. Yin's body built up with more and more green lightning. His entire body became a green shadow. It was like he was nothing more than something virtual. At this time, Mr. Een raised his head and looked at Han Sen spookily. He used his hand to press Han Sen's head. His hands had already turned into green lightning. When his palm touched Han Sen's head, it made Han Sen's head pop and crack with lightning. It was like countless volts of green electricity surging into Han Sen's brain. Mr. Yin's whole body quickly became green lightning that was sent directly into Han Sen's brain. It made Han Sen's body shine with a green light. Even his hair was standing up straight due to the electric shock. The battle power of the ghost heads is not too high, but their ghost brain is really quite overpowering. It is something quite rare in the universe. It is no wonder why Mother spent so many resources raising them. Upon seeing all this, Bai Wanjie nodded. Raising an army to be used for one purpose was proving to be worthwhile. Mr. Yin's performance satisfied him. With a ghost head deified like that with him, it was much easier for him to accomplish whatever he wished. While Bai Wanjie was thinking, he suddenly saw Han Sen, who was being invaded by Mr. Een, smiling in his direction. Han Sen gave him a disdained look. Bai Wanjie's heart was suddenly hit with a bad feeling. Before he could respond, he saw Han Sen's body possess a green light. It was like a firework exploding. Then, it suddenly disappeared. Bai Wanjie's face changed. He could no longer feel Mr. Yin's existence inside Han Sen's body. Xenogeneic, deified hunted. In head ghost, Xenogeneic gene found. Obtained weird head ghost beast soul. Deified gene already absorbed. Deified gene. The announcement kept popping up in Han Sen's head. It had 6 deified genes. What a good man. He just gave me free deified genes and a beast soul. Han Sen complimented the gift basket. When Mr. Een entered his head, he knew he would end up dead. As expected, the black crystal armor was triggered. A minor invasion was all that was needed for Mr. Een to end up dead a second later. He had become Han Sen's snack. Meanwhile, Bai Wanjie looked terrible. He never thought he would be unable to extract Han Sen's memories. He had also lost Mr. Een, whom he had raised for a long time. Bai Wanjie's face looked terrible. Upon seeing it, he knew he had to be correct. If it was not a special Xenogeneic, how else could it control a strange place like the Space Garden? Even if I know he is the red-robed child, it will be pointless if I cannot find a way to control it. Even Mr. Een was unable to control it. So, that means I will have to ask the Grandmaster. But the Grandmaster went to the Big Baron systems, so I do not think he will be back anytime soon.
Bai Wanjie zegt.
He quickly thought of someone else. I need to get Mr. White from the Winter Garden. Bai Wanjie summoned a servant and gave him a pass. He told him, "Be polite to Mr. White. Do not offend him." The servant accepted the pass and departed. Bai Wanjie thought, Mr. White has a lot of knowledge. Before he was deified, he had already accomplished many shocking things. After becoming deified, he has only become even better. With his weird powers, we might stand a chance. Greetings, Mr. Crown Prince. Mr. White went to the Crown Prince's manor and bowed before Bai Wanjie. There is no need for such modesty. Baiwanjia lifted Mr. White and said, "Today, I have asked you to come here because there is something you must understand. I hope you will be able to help me." "Please tell me what it is, Mr. Crown Prince," Mr. White gently said. "If I know how to fix what bothers you, it will be my pleasure to do just that." Baiwanjia told him about Mr. Yin using Ghost Head Fall on Han Sen and how he ended up dying, but he did not tell him about Han Sen's story or where he had come from. After hearing this, Mr. White thought for a moment. He soon said, "I will need to take a look at the xenogeneic first. Only then can I examine it and give you the accurate answer you seek, Mr. Crown Prince." "Please do that." Baiwanjia took Mr. White over to the supergravity cabin that contained Han Sen. Han Sen saw Baiwanjia had brought Mr. White with him. When he did, he suddenly felt happy. Yet, he did not dare show that happiness on his face. He looked at Baiwanjia and gave him a look of scornful mocking. "That is the xenogeneic, Mr. White." Baiwanjia did not care. He gestured toward Mr. White. Mr. White walked in front of Han Sen and checked him out. He reached a hand out to touch Han Sen's head. On the other hand, he was counting his fingers as if he was calculating something. Han Sen's face was full of disdain. His heart was jumping, but he did not seek to give him any hints in case Baiwanjia saw it. Even if Baiwanjia didn't see it, there were cameras. If Baiwanjia went to look at the cameras, he would notice something. That would only lead to harm upon Mr. White. Han Sen thought, with Mr. White's power, he must be able to recognize me. Mr. White did not seem to show any sign of knowing that. His face did not change. He acted as if Han Sen was a total stranger. He touched every inch of Han Sen's body and returned to Baiwanjia. After all that time, however, Han Sen did not see any changes in Mr. White's eyes. Did Mr. White not recognize me? Han Sen felt a bit sad about that, but he could not hint at him in any way. "Did you find out anything?" Baiwanjia asked. Mr. White looked at Han Sen before replying to Baiwanjia. "We should talk about it when we're out of here." Upon hearing that, Han Sen felt a chill. Did Mr. White recognize me? Baiwanjia understood and gestured for them to exit. He and Mr. White left the supergravity cabin. He took Mr. White to a lobby. After they sat down, Baiwanjia said, "We can talk in here. You can tell me anything." Mr. White did not reply. It seemed as if he was trying to find a way to compose what he wished to say. A while later, he said, "From what I have been able to tell, Mr. Yin should not have used Ghost Head Fall on him. Mr. Yin had just become a transmutation class. Even if he was larvae class or even butterfly class, using Ghost Head Fall would have likely resulted in his death." Baiwanjia was surprised, so he asked, "Oh, why is that?" "If I have guessed correctly, that xenogeneic came from the space garden," Mr. White slowly said. "Is that right? How did you know where it came from?" Baiwanjia was shocked. He had not told Mr. White where Han Sen had come from, yet Mr. White had been able to guess it. That was unbelievable. Mr. White quietly said, "I am good at predicting. It is not hard to see where it came from." "You really are a genius, but what is that supposed to mean?" Baiwanjia now believed Mr. White. "From what I have seen, the Space Garden is a plant xenogeneic that is true God class," Mr. White replied. "Its power is very unique. Even if a true God class elite tried to, it may not enter the Space Garden." Baiwanjia saw that Mr. White was able to tell the secrets of the place. Thus, he believed him even more. The secrets of the Space Garden being a true God xenogeneic was not something many people knew. He had only heard the secret from Bai King once before. Mr. White was from a small race that was raised by the Extreme King, yet he knew this secret. Baiwanjia believed Mr. White even more. "Earlier, I calculated this xenogeneic's identity. If I have guessed correctly, he is the son of the Space Garden. When the Space Garden raised him, he earned many special abilities. So, he is not just a born deified. He has two talents. He is a special child that can conquer the universe." Mr. White paused and said, "I believe that something strange must have happened in the Space Garden that made many creatures die. That is what must have happened when he was born. When this special child was born, its life force and genes were scarier than ordinary born deifieds. He is almost immortal. Other people might be able to kill it, but taking its mind is an impossible task. If that is true, how can I control him?" Baiwanjia knew Mr. White hadn't gone to the Space Garden, but he spoke like he had been. He had not missed a single part, which made him very confused. With my power, I do not think I can help you, Mr. White said. Why don't you find the Grandmaster to help? With his power, I am sure you can tame it. The Grandmaster is out on business, and I am afraid he will not be back soon. Bai Wanjie could see there was more for Mr. White to say, so he asked, Mr. White, is there no other way? It is not that there is not another way, but it would be very troublesome, Mr. White said. Please tell me, Mr. White, Bai Wanjie said with glee. If you want to control this child, perhaps you can go and make use of the Extreme King's overbearing eye, Mr. White slowly said. Extreme King's overbearing eye? What do you mean? Bai Wanjie frowned and looked at Mr. White. The Extreme King's overbearing eye was a forbidden place in the Extreme King's realm. Even within the Extreme King, not many people received permission to enter. Bai Wanjie was a crown prince, and he had only just recently earned the correct permission to go there. Of course, he knew what the Extreme King's overbearing eye was, but he did not understand why Mr. White would mention the Extreme King's overbearing eye. What did it have to do with the taming of a xenogeniac? Mr. White was not in a rush as he answered, This xenogeniac is very special. It is a xenogeniac that was grown from a plant, but it has received special treatment. It even has a body. It is a born deified with two extreme bodies. Its body structure and thinking are completely different. That is the reason normal mind control skills like Mr. Een used are inefficient. After pausing, Mr. White went on to say, From what I can tell, the Extreme King's overbearing eye is a true god eye that was left behind by the second ancestor. It has absolute order power. Use the absolute order power to govern the xenogeniac's two extreme bodies. Then, all you will need is a simple mind control talent to control his heart. You will not need anything like Ghost Headfall. Bai Wanjie looked at Mr. White and asked, Will that really work? I am just guessing, but I do not think the truth will differ much, Mr. White quietly said. There is one thing you must remember, though, Crown Prince. Please tell me. Bai Wanjie looked at Mr. White with eyes as sharp as a sword. It was like he was attempting to see through his heart. It was just as Mr. White said. The Extreme King's overbearing eye came from the Extreme King's second ancestor. It was a true god eye when he became a true god. It was the best gene the second ancestor had. It had an unbelievable amount of power. The second ancestor did not decide on heading to the Geno Hall. It left its true god eye with the Extreme King to suppress King Kingdom's luck. That was the very core of King Kingdom's defensive systems. Its position was like Sky Palace's Sky Eye. It was the item to control and determine the fate of an entire race. It was more important than any true god item, so it was something they could not afford to lose. It was not just Mr. White. Anyone who mentioned the Extreme King's overbearing eye was put on alert. He never wanted anyone to make use of it. While you use the Extreme King's overbearing eye to split his two extreme bodies, do not rush the process, Mr. White seriously said. You need to be careful. Otherwise, something may backfire. Please remember that, Mr. Crown Prince. If you decide to try this, do not rush it. If you do, there may be a disaster. Extreme King's overbearing eye is the very core of the Extreme King civilization, Bai Wanjie said. I cannot bring any other creature there. Is there another way? Mr. White thought for a while and said, It is not like there isn't. I have heard the king has a king's book. It can split up many creatures in the universe. If you use that book, you can control that spirit. The king's book has not been used by my father for a long time, Bai Wanjie said. He will not use it for a small spirit. Then, there is nothing else I can do. Mr. White bowed and said, King's Kingdom has many elites. Perhaps you can ask others for a suggestion on what you might be able to do. Thanks a lot, Mr. White. Bai Wanjie sent Mr. White away. The Extreme King's overbearing eye was very important, so Bai Wanjie did not believe the man right away. He asked a few other Extreme King deified elites for their opinions to see if there was anything they could do to control Han Senator, but it was just like Mr. White said. There was nothing they could do to Han Senator. A butterfly class being that was good at using mind control skills was unable to control Han Sen's mind. Bai Wanjie asked his uncle to come over. He still could not control Han Sen, so Mr. White told his uncle about Mr. White's method. Uncle, do you think Mr. White's method might actually work? It seems as if it makes sense, but before we try it, I am not sure it is actually all that useful, Nan Huaikong quietly said. Do you think I can give it a go, uncle? Bai Wanjie asked. The more powerful Han Sen was, the greater Bai Wanjie's desire for control became. Back in the space garden, he saw the green light shoot into the sky. He thought the person that killed the god was still inside the space garden. Perhaps the god's personality was still there in the space garden. It made Bai Wanjie want to claim the space garden all the more. It could be useful, but the Extreme King's overbearing eye is too important, Nan Huaikong said. In case something happens, perhaps you should not use this on such a trivial matter. Even if you were the one to cause a mess with this, not even that would quell the fury of the king. Nan Huaikong did not know Bai Wanjie wanted the space garden. Aside from the resources of the space garden, he also wanted the god's personality that everyone else wanted. Getting the god's personality meant they could become god spirits. That was something true god elites could not even achieve. Bai Wanjie would not miss out on such an opportunity. After sending Nan Huaikong away, Bai Wanjie used many methods and all kinds of torture tools on Han Senator. No matter what he tried, he could not make Han Sen obey. That made him start to do something else. Han Sen's situation was bad. There was no doubt about that. He was injured all over. This time, he was getting tortured so much that his body was in agony. Even so, it was not enough to make him change his mind. Bai Wanjie was unable to discover a way to break Han Sen, who was still holding on nonstop. Han Sen was not going to divulge a thing. He knew Bai Wanjie wanted the space garden. He would not kill him before he found it. Bai Wanjie looked at Han Sen with disdain. After being silent for so long, he suddenly turned off the supergravity suppression. He lifted Han Sen and departed the supergravity cabin. He had thought about it day and night. He could no longer resist the temptation of the space garden and the possibility of finding the god's personality. He wanted to take Han Sen to the Extreme King's overbearing eye and do what Mr. White had told him to do. Now, Han Sen was feeling terrible and thought, "Where is Bai Wanjie taking me to? It looks like Mr. White really didn't recognize me. Otherwise, he would have reacted. He should have at least given me a hint if he did." Bai Wanjie carried Han Sen the entire way. They went through many doors. Han Sen was shocked. He thought, "I did not think his father's bedroom has this much security. Where is he taking me?" Han Sen was a bit worried. After all, his body had not yet recovered. He was rather scared. When Bai Wanjie stopped before a palace, he saw a familiar statue. That statue was the same as the one he saw in an Extreme King pavilion. It was the second leader of the Extreme King. This statue looked a little different from the statue of the Extreme King's second ancestor he saw in the Extreme King pavilion. The second ancestor's statue on this palace's platform was holding a scale. It made the whole statue look serious. It looked like everything had to be fair and square. It looked like a god, but it did not have the emotion to look at everybody.